LSU with Carter, man, I'm headed to the field. Terror of the tiger, I'ma always keep it real. Every team gon' get devoured, it's the power. LSU with Carter, it's the power. LSU with Carter.
Let's freaking go! Starting off a live stream a little bit different on a glorious Sunday because we have got to talk about Peter freaking Woods. If you're listening via podcast, I'm sorry. You have got to get to the YouTube because Peter Woods is just dominating people on the screen. You see him playing South Carolina, splitting that double. That was actually more so a miscommunication from the guard and the tackle. But one thing you do see when you watch Peter Woods play is because of his quickness, you do see a lot of miscommunications on doubles. He's also very comfortable versus double teams. He sits really heavy on double teams, right? He is really hard to move. He's also really comfortable at any position on the line of scrimmage. Now, one thing I will say when you watch him, and we dive deeper, there's a Patreon film study for our patrons out there, patreon.com/LSU football. This is where I feel he is the deadliest, rushing from in front of the left guard. You could see him collapsing this pocket right here and giving the quarterback nowhere to step up. Man, he is just a force. And out of all the players on Clemson, as you get ready for the season opener here, this is a guy you need to be worried about the most, partially because this is the position. You see him just flatten this double team right here. I mean, that center just stood no chance. And you can see Brashard Smith, who was basically a nice draft pick by the Kansas City Chiefs. He just kind of gave up. He just stopped running. He was like, I don't want to run in to number 11. So coming up here, we're going to talk to a Clemson expert. He's going to break down everything that you need to know about Peter Woods and this Clemson defense. This is him actually lined up in front of the guard and the center. And, man, he just throws guys off of him, sees where the football is, and finds the ball carrier. I don't think people quite understand how freaking impressive that actually is. And to me, I understand this will come off as hyperbole here, but I do think he is a Dorsey-level type of player. After watching him all day today, there are concerns about I guess you could say snap count. Clemson was a defense that rotated heavier than normal. So you have a guy like Savion Jones, who's, a different defensive lineman than a guy like Peter Woods. Savion Jones played well over 500 snaps last year. Peter Woods was in the 300s last I checked. Maybe I was hallucinating when I saw that. So that is a good and bad thing. Can Peter Woods play, an entire game? It is a season opener, so he should be fine in terms of stamina. But the bad part about that is Clemson feels good about their defensive line depth. And as much as I love breaking down another team, an expert is always going to know more about the 2 deep and the 3 deep regarding their teams than I ever will. So after studying Clemson all day, this will be the best defensive line we play. It's funny because the second best defensive line we play will be in week 3 versus the Florida Gators. So we shall see what happens there. Now, as far as Clemson is concerned, we will have a few film studies that we've had, already loaded up that we've already been promoting, if you will. One will be a Kate Klubnik one that we started on earlier this year. We'll air it. I might just air it tomorrow. I don't know. Tomorrow, though, I have a pretty cool opportunity meeting with some SEC folks who watch the SEC channel, so I'm pumped up about that. I want to say thank you to everyone that came to the PHL meetup yesterday in Monroe, Louisiana. Yes, PHL loves being in North Louisiana, despite what Daily Joy says about it. Our friend of the channel, she absolutely rocked it last week. And shout out to Mike Scarborough for joining us last week as well. Now, LSU did play a scrimmage last night, and Garrett Nussmeier to Barian Brown was basically the only clip that we saw from the scrimmage. There wasn't a whole lot from the scrimmage that was released to the public. Obviously, there were people in attendance, and you can obviously talk to people that were able to put their eyes on the team. And, well, like you normally would feel if you went to a scrimmage, especially at night. Everything's lit up. I'm glad that they did it at night to get LSU ready for that environment, because most practices are during the day, and you're able to get that night feel. I talked to two different people that were at the scrimmage, and the overarching feel about this team is that they do think it is better than last year's team. Okay. Now, I know that's been the drumbeat of Brian Kelly since SEC Media Days, but what if Brian Kelly is actually right about this? Remember, the last couple of seasons leading into SEC Media Day. So let's go back to leading into year 2, the Jayden Daniels Heisman season. Brian Kelly did say, hey, hold your horses a little bit. And then he even said that, even though there was a year 3 quote out there, we're like, hey, judge me by year 3. Brian just did not talk about this roster the same way he has talked about this roster. And I know we had a viral tweet. I say viral. We're not like the biggest organization, but it was viral for us. We had the viral tweet of LSU changing some of the messaging inside its meeting room and just everywhere. Okay. Normally, LSU has all their opponents listed out. Okay. Clemson all the way down to when they play their final regular season game versus Oklahoma. But they just have Clemson on the board, 1-0. Okay. I saw a photo from Kelvin Bolden. All right. He is one of the new recruiting staffers, and I kind of want to put it up here. I try not to put too much media on the screen, and I know it's a little jarring that we started off with some film review, if you will, but I want you to see this. It may not mean a whole lot to you, but I don't think I have ever seen on one of these graphics when they scrimmage inside, what's the message? 1-0. You see it right there? 1-0. Look, I'll even make it big for you. Pause. 1-0. That is the message. It's that simple. 1-0. All this focus on this Clemson game. And it's kind of strange, especially with it being the new playoff. This will come off a little strange, which is fine. I think, for me, and this is just me, the 1-0 message feels like this Clemson game is a separate season than the rest of the year, right? Because no matter what, this game will not define the season for LSU. Season openers never really define your season, especially now, right? There are some season openers that LSU has played that has shown dominant teams, especially if you look back at the national championship teams. Our best teams were dominant mostly in season openers. But the truth is, you don't really know, right? It is just one game. And I do think this is definitely a top 5 season opener in terms of difficulty. But I do applaud LSU for its messaging. Don't worry about Louisiana Tech. Don't worry about Florida, even though that'll be our first SEC home game. Just lock in on Clemson. Just lock in there. Okay? Now, as far as some other season opening notes or from the scrimmage last night, Garrett continues to look fine. Right? And on top of that, the LSU wide receiver room continues to shine. And I am of the belief that LSU feels as comfortable about this wide receiver room and pass catching group as much, if not even more so, than going into last season with year 3 of Kyron Lacy and year 3 of Mason Taylor. They feel that strongly about this room. You know, the clip that was released from LSU, where it was a Garrett Nussmeier touchdown throw to Berrien Brown. It was tight coverage, right? It wasn't the worst coverage from P.J. Woodland. Wasn't the worst, okay? Now, once again, If you want the full Peter Woods film study, go to patreon.com/LSU football. Okay. Now, next thing, I want to appreciate there's over 100 of you in here, and we're not even in the 11-minute mark. I do appreciate you on a busy Sunday. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. Please hit that subscribe button, like button, all that stuff. Holy crap. I know we want to mostly just talk about LSU. But here's a funny thing about LSU YouTube is that if I were gone tomorrow, I think a lot of you would miss me, but you would just move on. Life moves on. Everyone moves on. Doesn't matter how famous or whatever you are. We all move on. And that's a good thing, right? We don't always want to wallow in our sorrows from yesteryear. But I have got to share a conversation I had earlier today with an athletic director. I was able to talk to an actual AD, which is wild. Not a Power 4 AD, but it is interesting how people view the news reported by Pete Thamel of ESPN, and it was released by others, regarding the 20-team college football playoff. Okay. Now, I won't obviously say who this is. This is very sensitive information. But the truth is, Tony Petitti, who is the Big Ten athletic director, is off his skis in the sense of you do not want the sport to go to the way of a 20-team playoff. And I have no idea who even thought of this idea. I partially blame Missouri's Elijah Drinkowitz for even floating this out there. If he was the originator of this idea, maybe Petitti heard Elijah say that and say, well, the SEC kind of likes it. Why don't we just try and see if a 2024 gazillion team playoff would actually be a good thing? You will lose me. You will lose me. I will always still care about LSU. I will probably still do my SEC thing. But if I want to watch the NFL where teams with 4 losses make the playoffs, I can go watch the NFL. Okay? We need to riot. We do. If you're a European soccer fan, you know that when these super leagues and they're trying to change the formats of the leagues, TLDR, I'm not going to get too deep into it, fans hit the streets. They said, no, this will not go. But no one's going to do that. And that's fine. I'll do it, though. They're ruining the sport. They've already ruined it enough when we go to 16, which seems inevitable. But holy crap. I had to, before I get into this next LSU subject, it would go against everything I am as a college football YouTuber to not share my disdain for this, okay? And this AD said, well, Petitti just doesn't really understand college football. He comes from an actual television backdrop. And what he brought up to me was very interesting as well. What if they are talking about 7 automatic bids for the Big Ten and 7 automatic bids for the SEC? What if you don't have 7 good teams? Were there 7 good teams in the Big Ten last year? I know I could say in the SEC that there were 7 good teams. Now, I can concede that the top end of the Big Ten was better than the top end of the SEC. They won the national championship, for goodness sakes. But the SEC was deeper, right? LSU would have been the 7th team in the playoff last year if the SEC had 7 qualifiers. But there would still be 2 at-large bids for other SEC schools to get in. I'm serious. Do we really need Arkansas in? I mean, is that where we are right now? Arkansas still fighting for a college football playoff berth? No, they're going to ruin the sport. They're going to ruin it in the name of money. And I'm telling you right now, the quicker you absolve yourself from the playoff being the only thing you care about or the thing you care about the most, obviously we want LSU to go to the playoff, and that's okay if that is the thing you want the most. That's the thing I want the most. But if the thing you care about as a college football fan the most is the playoff, you're always going to eat your head off. There's never going to be enough playoff games. Okay? So there you go. I'm done with that. I know you guys want me to talk LSU, but it is what it is. All right. Let's go to a few of your comments. if we have 3 1,000-yard wide receivers, that's never happened. 3 1,000-yard wide receivers on the same team. That's I would like to think that that's never happened at LSU. Now, there's been multiple years where there have been 2, but last year, Cliff, there was 2 1,000-yard receivers in the SEC, period, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't think you're going to get to 3. I will say, though, if there was a quarterback that could do it, it would be Garrett Nussmeier. Okay. Is it funny to get yelled at, says the LSU Monster? He was one of the first ones in the chat. Yeah, I get yelled at. Sometimes from people at LSU and sometimes from fans. That's okay. I love LSU. I've been a fan all my life. Can't wait till the game starts. 83 years old. Robert Nicholson. Did you know that this is the same Nicholson, Mr. Robert here, that they named the street after? Did you know that? This is the Robert Nicholson. They named Nicholson Drive after him. Google him. Robert Nicholson, a legend, watching tonight on PHL. I freaking love it. Yeah, Jason Max. I would love to know if there ever were 3 1,000-yard receivers on the same team. I would like to think that there's never been more than 2. I guess I don't know. And it's funny because Jason Max was at the Monroe show. We did some trivia. We might release those clips later this week. I don't know. We did some trivia for some giveaways. Let's see here. Big thanks to Rick showing some love in the Patreon Discord. But you could have 3 1,000-yard producers, right? You also don't want to have 3 1,000-yard receivers because that means your run game really wasn't going, more than likely. But yes, you can have 3 1,000-yard gainers like we did with obviously Clyde, Jamar, and Justin. And then obviously Jaden rushing with Malik and BTJ. So there you go. Now, next thing regarding LSU. One thing you will notice from watching Peter Woods is that the left guard is where they normally like to put him. So versus Georgia, they actually had him play defensive end, which was an interesting decision. He's more of a defensive tackle type of player. But Peter Woods loves to line up at left guard. And something I found to be very interesting regarding Woods and the interior of Clemson is they would prefer to twist him, which basically means they have him run through the A gap, attacking the center, and then they loop another DT around him, right? And then that gets into different terminology. It's more NFL stuff, but in college as well. Hot and cold, me and you, all that stuff. Basically, twist stunts is where you don't have a clear rush to the QB. You're twisting around, right? You're replacing one defensive lineman for another on a rush, like we just showed you a minute ago. And LSU, across multiple coaching staffs, have had their issues with twists. All right, so we need to be ready for that, and hopefully LSU is working on that during camp. Okay, let's watch Sibley, who lives in Austin. I've watched a Clemson QB since he was a kid. He's from my neighborhood. He played at Westlake High School, Drew Brees' high school. How good is Cade Klubnik? What does the data say? Is he elite? Can he control a game? So yeah, we've done a Cade Klubnik film study. We have one lined up already that we've already done. Okay. And I've had it scheduled. I might have to move it back a day because of my travel tomorrow. But Cade Klubnik is, to me, ridiculously good. And you can make a very, very, very strong case. He is the best quarterback in college football. a very strong case. Let's go to Harry. He says, word on the run game last night, red zone. It was just a scrimmage, right? Look, I will say, as far as LSU's run game, the good thing going into the season opener is that Clemson's run defense has not been their strength, even though they have all these great defensive linemen. Harry, red zone, obviously, I'm going to mostly focus on the positive. The Garrett Dart to Berrien looked really good. And that was obviously a red zone play. For me, you look at the spring game, LSU worked a bunch of different red zone concepts. He did some Jawan Johnson stuff in that game. And you look at the red zone touchdown percentage from last year, LSU was abysmal at 54%. Abysmal is a bit of a strong word, but you want your touchdown percentage in the red zone to be in the 60s, right? Which is basically 2 out of every 3. They're in the mid 50s, which is closer to 1 out of every 2 times you go to the red zone. I will say that the red zone defense for LSU, I think, is actually going to be really good. Okay. Which is almost as important. But you do want to see better red zone execution. Okay. I will also say, Harry, I was not boots on the ground, and I wish the media could have been able to go to the scrimmage. They were not able to go. Okay. Normally, after a scrimmage, I talk to at least 2 or 3 media members that go, and I either talk to, I can't say specifically who, but I try to talk to people that are at the actual practices. I will say, we'll go back to what I said at the beginning, because we know we have a bunch of people trickling in here. The vibes are different with this team. Now, I know that feels like me just giving you LSU cope, LSU optimism, if you will. But Cliff, Sibley, a lot of my super diehards that have been listening to me now for four off seasons, you heard me bang the table about the defensive talent regarding this team going into last year. And I took heat for that as an LSU YouTuber. I don't want credit for saying that the defensive talent is what it is, and it ended up hurting LSU last year. I just want to tell you how I feel, okay? And that's why, I have this channel to tell you how I feel. But the truth is, I like where we are. I do. Obviously, the offensive line thing is an issue, and I am worried about some of the defensive matchups for how we want to play defense versus how we want to play Clemson offensively. I do think this LSU defense can still be very good. I do think this LSU defense, most importantly, will be better equipped to stop mobile quarterbacks this year. I really do believe it. And it's not just a personnel thing. You heard, and a reporter pressed Blake Baker on this subject when he did his media viewing. And in his press conference, if you will, he said, I don't want to get into the specifics, but he did admit that he learned some lessons about himself. And if you piece together a few things that Brian Kelly said last year, there was a play where Jordan Gilbert just kind of ran himself out of the play, and it was a long Jalen Milroe touchdown run. I do think, and sometimes with these press conferences, if there's not specificity, you kind of have to try your best to piece some things together. I really do think LSU is going to be better served because Blake Baker has a full year of not being able to do the thing that he needed to do last year, which is stop the mobile quarterbacks. Okay? Okay. Let's go to Samuel here. Y'all see the Clemson tight end basketball player DUI. Okay. So this is news. I don't think it's relevant. You also have to understand that we have a Clemson guest coming on. We'll ask him about it. But Hunter Shefflin was a fantastic basketball player for, what is his name, Bruce Brownell or something like that. He was part of their March Madness runs. Obviously, they went on a long one 2 years ago, and then they got beat by, well, I won't say who they got beat by, but they got beat, all right, because it's a sore subject for a lot of us in the first round in an upset. And he's a tall, stretch, four-ish kind of basketball player moving over to football. And he's away from the team. Dabo Swinney, I'm pretty sure I saw a statement earlier today from Clemson saying that they're looking into this. Now, how big of a part of this offense was he supposed to be? I don't think so. I don't think it was going to be a big part. The biggest position that Clemson has issues at right now is running back. So, I dove so deep on Clemson today, and I don't want to step on the toes of the guests, but they have a wide receiver by the name of Adam Randall. All right, Adam Randall was a ridiculously athletic, top 150 wide receiver coming out of Clemson. All right, and he never quite broke out. Now, part of that was because Clemson has had strong wide receiver play over the past couple of years, as they have always had, right? From Kane to Higgins to Renfrow to now where we are here, right? And they moved on to running back. And I don't think this is like your normal wide receiver moving to running back because he is so physically gifted. And they're going to be relying on him and a freshman, true freshman, a top 5 running back coming into this next season to be their workhorse running back. Now, this is why I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal, because you can make a case that the biggest positional group advantage, if you're doing position by position, that LSU has in this game will be at running back, right? Because you're taking Caden Durham and maybe even Caleb Jackson over an inexperienced backfield like Clemson has. They had Phil Maffa drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. Even with this Clemson injury that happened this week at practice, their top 6 offensive linemen returned. That is a lot of snaps. A lot. So I feel as if that the running back position, if you're younger there, it's a little bit easier for that running back to be good right away if that running back is being protected well. Okay? So, and in this case, he will be protected really well. All right. Now, a few other things as far as the secondary is concerned. There's been a big brouhaha over who's going to be starting at corner for LSU between DJ Pickett and Ashton Stamps. It's pretty certain at this point that Mansour Delane is going to start at one of the corner positions, okay? So opposite Delane, I believe if I were to guess today, now once again, this is just my guess, but I believe Ashton Stamps would be the first person to be opposite Mansour Delane. But it would not shock me if it's DJ Pickett. Based on what I know, though, it does seem as if Stamps has gotten more looks. I also think P.J. Woodland is going to be a big part of this LSU secondary this year. And even though he was beat in that clip we talked about earlier, it is something, right? That Woodland had the season that he had last year, which was up and down, but this was a 3-star true freshman stepping in and playing the way that he played last year, which was mostly fine, in particular if you use a true freshman curve, if you will. So I'm really talking to myself into Stamps Woodland being something this year, right? It is so hard for you to have a tough close to a season and then you magically become a great starter that next year, right? And that was the case for Woodland and in particular Stamps. But it's possible, right? I saw this weekend, I do a lot of NFL preseason breakdowns, did one on the Giants on my NFL channel. I saw Cordell Flott put the straps down on Garrett freaking Wilson. If you would have saw Cordell Flott as a sophomore and then say he's seat belting Garrett Wilson in the NFL, you would have never have thought that. So DBs do get better. They do, right? So I would like to think either one of those two will turn into something. But for me, the perfect scenario, the scenario I think that gives LSU the most upside is DJ Pickett starting opposite Mansour Delane. That's how I feel. Okay. Now, he's strapped. He strapped him. Dev. He strapped him. Okay. Show some love. Let's go to Player X. Dropping a nice super chat. Player X from BR. Yeah, we had dinner with him. My wife said, hey, Player X. It was weird. So I said weird. It was fun. One of our funnest PHL get-togethers. Player X was there. Ellie Mom was there. Cliff was there. And mother of LSU Tiger great Mason Smith was there. Shout out to Dr. Kara, still a supporter. She was in New Orleans for the Jaguars Saints game earlier today. And Player X has a controversial super chat here. He says the offensive line will be fine for LSU. And I hope you're right. I really, really, really do. Okay. Look, it's difficult when you do this and you have to talk about a position that might be struggling in practice. It is something that with the protections versus Clemson, if I'm LSU, to help this offensive line versus this defensive line, one thing I would not do if LSU were to ask me, hey, you're the amateur film study guy, what would you do versus Clemson? I'd go under center. I really would. Because for me, I know that's not what we do. And I don't think we would ever do that with Garrett. And that takes away some of the things that Garrett is really good at. But if you don't want to do that, I would get very exotic with my protections. You know, there's one play in the Patreon that I thought was very interesting. So it was early LSU, or I say LSU, South Carolina versus Clemson. All right. So part of the reason why I wanted to look at the South Carolina versus Clemson games, I not only looked at this one, I looked at the one that Shane Beamer upset a few years ago. One thing he did a really good job versus these Clemson fronts was he gave them different looks for them to look at. Now, the truth is, the reason why South Carolina beat Clemson last year was Lenore Sellers was superhuman. That was 80% of it. He really was superhuman in that game. It was a Jaden Daniels level performance, okay? And I'm not hyperbole. It really was that great of a game. But on the it was like the first or second play, go to the Patreon and see it for yourself. To help out the left tackle versus TJ Parker, what Dow Loggins, the OC, decided to do was he actually had his wide receiver motion in and chip TJ Parker, who didn't see it coming. Now, he didn't just blindside him. He just gave him a little chip, and that stopped TJ Parker right in his tracks, and then he released onto the route. Okay. The problem was that Peter Woods blew up the play somewhere else. But I would get very exotic with my protections more so than I would with my play calling, right? Do whatever you can to give that defensive line of Clemson different looks. And the thing that I would do more than anything else after watching this Clemson front all day is throw to the running backs out of the backfield. All right. do some creative things regarding your running backs just in general. Have them leak out. Because our screen game has never really been what the LSU offense has been about, right? We've never really been huge RB screen type of teams, right? 07 LSU was actually fine at that. They had a Charles Scott screen other than just a little leak over the middle that was ahead of its time. And I know that's like painful when it comes to discussing the Les Miles era, but and Joe throwing the Clyde out of the backfield won us quite a few games, in particular the Alabama game. But I know that's been such a big point of emphasis for me. It's been probably the thing that I've screamed about the most, even more so than the run game, because it's either going to work or it's not going to work. But throwing out of the backfield is something that I felt we were actually good at last year, not only with Garrett to Caden, but also Garrett to Caleb, in particular in that UCLA game. So, Player X, I think the offensive line will be fine. I do think it's going to be rough sledding in the first game, and it's hard to not have that opinion at all. I mean, it's hard to not have that opinion, period. Okay. Dev's a Clemson fan. You can't say Sellers is mid, though. Come on now. Especially in LSU and Clemson chat, cannot say Lenore Sellers is mid. No, we can't do that. Now, if this was an Alabama chat, sure, you can make that case. But I think Lenore Sellers is like the best quarterback in college football? No. Do I think he's going to win the Heisman? No. He's such a popular Heisman pick. I just don't think the team is going to be that good. And we talked about it. We talked about Randall a little bit earlier, right? We go deep, man. All right. Let's go to a few more here. Player X, follow up with your super chat. We should run more pulls with the offensive line to get them going. All right. So let's get into the minutiae here with the pulls. Yeah, the problem with pulling versus this front is Woods in particular. I know I've talked so much about Peter Woods. He's a thumbnail image. Just did the Patreon say, go check it out for yourself. Link is down below. The problem with Woods is he is so damn good at reading a play. I mean, there are so many instances where Peter Woods fins off a block and then just runs into the flats and runs a running back down. He is very quick at reading where the running back is going. So a play that we broke down earlier in the stream, won't do it again, is Pitt was down blocking Woods and the play was being run to the opposite side, and he was able to cross face of the center and just run down the running back for basically a gain of no yards. That is such a difficult play. Like, you have got to be such a high-end athlete and processor to make that play. So there you go. Now, coming up next, we'll talk to our guest, a man who breaks down Clemson like no other. But first, are you missing that sweet swing? If pain is holding your golf game back, you must check out the full simulator at the Lafayette location of Laborde Therapy Center. Yes, Chase and his team built this simulator to go along with a full set of programs catered to your needs. Yes, this entire team at Laborde Therapy worked hard to fix that back, your elbow, shoulders, wrists, knees, toes. It doesn't matter. At their Lafayette location, 337-981-4053. Call today. But what if you don't golf? And what if you don't live in Lafayette? No problem. They fix anything therapy related. Book today, labordetherapy.com, with locations in Carencro, Youngsville, Morgan City, and Crowley. labordetherapy.com. LABORDE therapy.com. Will Vandervoort is our guest. Your biggest plus for LSU, since you've been studying LSU, Will, for this matchup, what concerns you the most from a Clemson perspective?
I would say probably their wide receivers and the quarterback. Obviously, I think, not that Clemson doesn't have good, secondary people, because they do, but I mean, they've always been known for their receivers. And again, it looks like this year they're going to be as talented as anybody in the country when it comes to throwing the football. And of course, they got one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and Nussmeier. So, I think, that makes them dangerous if they get. I think the key to this whole game, and I know we're kind of jumping in fast to it, but I think the key to the whole game is that offensive line for LSU. If they're good, like they can be, and like I think they will be later in the year. I think for Clemson, the good news for Clemson is they're getting them first game of the season on the road. I think if that offensive line comes in and plays well against Clemson, then I think it could be a very, very high score and dangerous game for Clemson, where they're going to have to play catch up. And what I mean by that is up and down the field kind of football game, which they don't want to play necessarily with LSU and those, those wide receivers and those skill players they got. Because when you look at the running game, LSU's got a dynamic running game. They got a dynamic quarterback. They got dynamic receivers. Their only question mark is on the offensive line. And I expect the defense this year is going to be much better than it has been in years past.
Let's go through Clemson's secondary, right? Because so much has been made of this ferocious front. We know they're elite at defensive line and linebacker. So go through position by position, starting off with the corners here.
Yeah, so at cornerback, you look at Avion Terrell, who's he's a preseason All-American candidate. He's a preseason All-ACC guy. They like him. They think he's a guy that has a chance to, as he's continued to progress. The only knock on him is he's just not very big. He's not a big guy, not a tall guy. And so, tall physical guys can have their way with him. And so I look for LSU to try to exploit that a little bit, even though he's really good. I don't want people to, think, he does have his problems as well, right? I mean, when let me look at his official roster, what they say he is. Avion is listed at 5'11", 180. He's not 5'11". He's probably more 5'10" range is where I would say he's at. So I definitely tell you he's not 5'11". But then I do like, but I like his overall speed. He's got good hips. He can really track the football. He can actually jump better than you would think a guy his height should be. So he's got a lot of athletic ability, and that gives him the chance. That's what makes him so good as a corner. And then I say on the other side, they got Ashton Hampton. He's a sophomore this year. Really, they really like him, and he really came on at the halfway part of the second part of the season last year. If you remember, made that unbelievable interception with one hand, going back like this on a fade pass to intercept a pass against Virginia Tech. And that was and it wasn't a poorly thrown football. It was actually a really, just a great play on his part. And so he's got a lot of skill, a lot of potential. He's the exact opposite over there, of Avion Terrell. Avion. He's the exact opposite of Avion. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. So he's a tall, physical corner. And so, I think then you're going to look at the nickel position, the small tiger, as Tom Allen calls it. You're going to have Sheldon Lewis over there playing that. That's number 2. And then also, they're going to have Tink Kelly, who moved from wide receiver to defensive back this year. Is going to play that other position. So that's your corners. At linebacker, you're going to see Wade Woodaz. He's back for his senior year. He's a 2-year starter, played a lot as a freshman as well, his freshman year. So you're bringing back a guy with a lot of experience. They're bringing back Sammy Brown, probably the best tackler on the team, without a doubt. A lot of speed, can run corner, can run sideline to sideline. And he's going to be probably Clemson's middle linebacker. And then the Sam, or the big tiger, if you will, they're going to have several guys play that. Jeremiah Alexander, the transfer from Alabama, the 5-star transfer. He's going to probably play that position. They can also put Woodaz over there and bring Alexander in, have Alexander play the mic or the wheel as well. They can do different things with those guys. And then probably, Jamal Anderson's another guy that will probably get that look at that Tiger position as well. That's the big Tiger. They got two of them. It's called the little Tiger and the big Tiger when they go to that nickel position. And you might see a situation where you'll see both that little Tiger and the big Tiger on the field at the same time, and that big Tiger becomes more like a banded end, if you will. I know Tom Allen did a lot of things last year using that position, and people were confused about who was playing that banded end position, who was playing middle linebacker. He did a lot of things to confuse the quarterback on what they were actually doing there. So we'll see what that's going to be like and how the Clemson's going to use it with their personnel. So and then the strength of the defense is really on the defensive line, I think, which I know a lot of people last year, when you looked at Clemson, they sucked stopping the run last year, and they did because they did.
Why was that?
Well, because they didn't have him on the left side of the line. They didn't have really a good defensive end that could do it, where they went to the transfer portal and they got Will Helt, who's one of the top defensive players in the transfer portal last year, and he solidified that left side of the line. They've also got a guy like Jaheim Lawson. You're going to see the younger brother of Shaq Lawson. He's now really come along. He's up to 260 pounds. He's a lot stronger and bigger, and he's already a faster guy. So he's kind of taking that next step as well. So they feel real good about him and their depth over there. And then, of course, you got T.J. Parker, who is probably the most underrated defensive end in college football. This guy last year, I think, had let me make sure I get my numbers right. He had 19 tackles for a loss. He had 11 sacks, and he had 64 tackles. Oh, by the way, he led the country with 6 strip sacks, fumbles. But nobody talked about him hardly, And so, I think this guy.
Oh, so I was about to say now they're talking about it, but you're saying like during last year.
During last year, they talk about it. Now, part of that was because he really came on the second half of the season, because he spent the whole first half of the season with these migraines that were really affecting the way he played. And so they worked on that and they got it taken care of. And then after they got that taken care of, he just took off and was just unbelievable. So he's a guy that I think is probably the best player on that defensive front. And then Peter Woods, I want to see Peter Woods. I know everybody raves about him, but if people at Clemson think he's underperformed his whole career. And so that people at Clemson want to see him actually play like everybody says he is, because everybody talks about how great he is and everything, but they haven't seen it. He was so overweight last year and missed a lot of time.
They rotated him a lot. Like when I looked at his snap counts,
mm-hmm.
It wasn't as high as I thought it was going to be. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, because he got injured, he got banged up, and then he was overweight. When he got injured and missed a couple games, he ended up gaining a lot of weight. And at one point, he was probably playing at 360 pounds. And, you're just not going to cut it at that weight with his size. He's not like he's a Dexter Lawrence where he's 6'6", right? I mean, right. He's not that tall of a guy. So he's got to play at a lower weight, which he is now. He's at 307 pounds, best shape he's ever been in. We'll see if he's like, it's a money year, we like to call it. So we'll see if he's productive and the good news for him is he gets this with Will Helt there. He gets to stay inside and play the inside, play the 3 technique. And so that's more where he's at. Another guy, and there's a guy you need to know, and LSU fans should know, is a guy by the name of DeMonte Capehart, number 19, a guy who's been injured his whole career. He's in his 6th year now. He's had a medical red shirt, and then the COVID season has allowed him to stay this long. And, he's just had some bad luck with injuries, but if he's healthy, and right now he is, and Dabo, when he was talking about, he's like the healthiest he's been since he's been at Clemson, and he's available. Dabo says, when that guy's available, he's as good as anybody out there. And so that's a guy to watch for. And then they got Stephylon Green and Vic Burley as well. And then, Amari Adams has come in and really taken off as well. Dabo calls him, compared him to, you would a Sammy Watkins or a Trevor Lawrence to his position. Like he's just one of those freaks, and he's going to make a lot of noise this year as a true freshman, according to Coach Sweeney. So we'll see. That's their defense from all the way from corner to inside, from pretty much the entire roster, I guess.
Yeah.
Too deep.
Your thoughts on Ian Shefflin? I knew him for basketball. I knew that he was playing football. What was he even I know this DUI suspicion and
Yeah.
Dabo said what he said.
Yeah.
Was he even going to be a factor at tight end?
I don't know if he would be in this game. I think I would be really surprised if he was. I mean, he was kind of, from what we heard, he was getting mostly, second, third team reps at the time. And they're the guys they're going to count on are going to be Olsen Pat Henry. He's coming back with the most experience. They got another guy named Christian Bentancur who's they're really high on. They think he was redshirted last year. They think he's the next coming at Clemson at the tight end position. And then let's see, the third one was Josh Sapp. He's a guy that's more like Jordan Leggett. If you remember Jordan Leggett back in the 2016 season, he's more of that kind of tight end that just kind of you spread him out. He runs great routes and can get open for you and make big plays. So they feel good about those three, and those are the three that primarily were going to play. But I think they were trying to do certain packages with Ian Shefflin, and they probably will, but he'll be suspended for this game more than likely. I mean, if Dabo Swinney suspends a guy like Sammy Watkins for big game like he did, back in 2012 against Auburn, he'll do that with Ian Shefflin too. Dabo's big on making sure guys get the messages that, hey, if you get in trouble, you break the law, and you do stuff you're not supposed to do, you're not going to play. And so I expect him to be probably suspended for this game against LSU. So it'll be a little bit before we see what he's going to do. But LSU doesn't have to worry about him. Let's just say that.
Okay, Walker Parks, this injury, do you think he'll be ready for week 1?
That's a great question. Dabo says Clemson people don't need to worry about him. For your followers out there, listeners, Walker was injured in the first scrimmage, which was a week ago Saturday, and he was not Ian Walker, excuse me, and he was taken off the field. We were told he's carted off the field, and we don't know what the extent of the injury is, but Dabo says it's good news. He's going to be okay. Do I think he'll be back for LSU? My thing is, first of all, I don't think you need to push it if you don't have to, because I think they got depth on their offensive line.
Yeah.
And they got guys that started last year. And so unless he's 90%, I'll be surprised if he's out there, to be honest with you. And I don't know 100% because Coach Swinney won't say, but I'll be surprised if he's out there if he's not 90% or better.
Let's go to Tristan Lee. All right, so this is what's interesting. I'm like you. I like to dive down deep. Okay. LSU spent so many resources recruiting Tristan Lee. I mean, this was from way yesteryear. Ed Orgeron freaking loved him some Tristan Lee. And so now, what is this? Is this year 6 for him? I was shocked he still had eligibility left, the left tackle.
Yeah, so, this is I guess it's year 6. It could be. Crazy. Yeah, I don't know if was he a super senior. I'm not sure. I can't remember if he's a super senior or not. But he did have a. I think you're correct because he did come in 2021 class, and he would have been. No, he didn't play at all his senior year of high school because of COVID, right. And so he talked about that really hurt his progression. So when he came into Clemson, he was overweight. He hadn't played football in over a year. And, so they had to really, and for an offense, a quarterback and a wide receivers, they could go out there and play catch and do things like that, right? To keep themselves fresh and in the game. What does an offensive lineman do? All he could do is lift weights and do some drills with his hands and stuff. That's it. They really need to be out on the field. They really need to be getting their technique down and things of that nature, right? They need to be coached. And he had a whole year where he didn't get to get coached at all. And that set him back a year. It also set Ryan Linthicum, Clemson's center, back a year as well. And both those guys kind of talked about that. And then Tristan gets injured, and then that sets him back a little bit as well. And so it was really more his third year before he really got to start playing. And then last year he really, became a regular starter and really kind of took off at that left tackle position. Now, he's a guy I think when he gets to the next level is a guard and not a tackle. I think that's where you're going to see him play. And what I'm interested in this matchup is how the freshman Brandon Jacobs does when he's out there. Because if he does,
don't get me started. Don't. We're getting old. I don't want to hear that. So for those that don't know, Brandon Jacobs is the son of the other Brandon Jacobs. If you're a ball knower, you remember Brandon Jacobs. Basically, if you don't know, Brandon Jacobs was a running back for the New York Giants.
Right.
He was Kenny Hilliard, but fast, right? And the dude was
big in his own part, too, for running back.
Right. One of the biggest running backs. So what happens?
So his son is a giant.
His son is absolutely, positively ginormous.
What is he? 17 years old, and he's 6'8", 300. Let me see the official weight they have him. Let's see. They got him at 350 pounds. They got him 6'7", 350, but I think he's like 6'8", 360, 365. I mean, he's so, and it's not fat either. I'm talking, it's like big. And I always say, like, Dexter Lawrence is the biggest human I've ever seen in person until I saw Brandon Jacobs. and Dexter Lawrence is a big boy, but this guy is bigger than Dexter Lawrence, and he's going to be a heck of a player. So yeah, if he's already been working with second team left tackle, and so they're going to use him in this game. He's going to play, and I'm going to see how he performs in this game. And if he does, I don't think it's going to happen in this game, but if he does perform well, then I think what you're going to do is see him. Look at that. That's just at least that giant right there.
Dude, that is just stupid. So that is a 6'4", 240-pound running back next to his son. That is
6'7", 6'8", 350.
That is just stupid, man. Dude, that is just so stupid.
It is, and it's and so I think I wouldn't be surprised if he plays well. That Clemson moves him into the starting lineup maybe 4 weeks into the season, and then you move Tristan Lee to his natural position, which is left guard. And then I think Clemson's better because Tristan Lee is nasty coming off the ball. When Clemson's running the football and they're running to the left side, Tristan Lee knows he's running. There's a run play. Oh, man, it's going to go for yards because that guy just barrels over people. His natural position is guard. He's going to play that in the NFL. And I think Clemson, if Matt Luke would love to get him in that position if that opportunity presents itself, so he can get a lot of film of playing that position. He started off there last year at left guard because of injuries. They had to move him out to left tackle, and so that's why he's played a little bit at left tackle. And he'll start the year there. But Colin Sadler can play left or right tackle. I mean, right or left guard. And then they got Harris Sewell, who's played a lot at guard position, started a lot too. So they're in good shape with their depth on that offensive line. And that's why I said they don't really need Walker Parks to rush in. They can probably be okay without him in this game.
Yeah, that is so interesting. The Jacob storyline though. And by the way, Matt Luke, as a film study guy, I reach out to different offensive line coaches, and they all say Matt Luke is the guy.
Yeah.
So that concerns me that it just seems like Clemson's coaching staff has just gotten so much better, which lends me, before we talk about Cade here.
Okay.
What is your honest thoughts on Garrett Riley as a play caller? Because us casuals that don't watch Clemson every day, they would see the last name and be like, oh, well, he's got to be good. Okay. Mm-hmm. So give me your honest opinion on how Garrett is done as a Clemson OC.
I think he's a good play caller. I think he has good balance when he has all the tools at his disposal. You look at those 6 games last year where they won 6 straight, and before some of the injuries started catching up to them, their offense was explosive. They were running. They led the ACC in rushing yards at that time. They led the ACC in yards per carry, and their passing game was like 1 or 2 in the ACC. And the passing game stayed there all year because they had to, because Phil Maffa got hurt, and I just mentioned injuries on the offensive line, to Tristan Lee and those guys later in the year, and that really kind of set the run game back. But when they were balanced, he was mixing it up as well as anybody, and the defenses were just trying to guess what he was doing, and that's what makes him so good. And if their run game can be better, and I think with Adam Randall back there, there's so many things they can do with Adam Randall, and it's just going to open up the offense. It really is. It's
Okay.
going to be an
All right.
explosive offense.
So let's get into running back here.
Yeah.
I was hyping up Adam Randall because, you would think LSU YouTubers would be like, oh, wide receiver now playing running back. Well, I'll be honest. I was really high on Adam Randall coming out of high school. I really liked his tape. And part of it was because he's such a really athletic wide receiver. How has this transition been at running back? And I know they're also interested in playing their talented 4-star running back as well.
Yeah. First, Gideon Davison is who you're talking about,
Yes.
who they say it reminds them of Travis Etienne. So that's high praise. We'll see if that's the case. He's wearing number 9 like Travis Etienne. So let's see if he brings that same kind of energy. They like him at running back. He really came into the spring ready to go. Coaches were really impressed with what knowledge he took. Now, remember, he got to spend the 15 or the 2 weeks of practice before the college football playoff. He got to spend that at running back, and that helped a little bit too.
Okay.
Got some plays in. He kind of learned 3 plays is what he really learned, and that's what he ran in the game.
Oh, okay.
One of those plays he ran, he took for 41 yards against Texas, who has one of the best defenses in the country, right? He breaks off a 41-yard run against them. So, boom, he's got some ability. He had the long kickoff return, obviously, in the ACC championship game that set up the winning field goal for him. So he's got big play ability with the ball in his hands. And so it's just a matter of just getting him to understand the position and what you're looking for. But I think what helps him is he already understands coverages. So that's going to be a big plus for him, is he understands when he looks back there and sees where the linebackers and safeties are doing, he already knows that part of the game. Now he's just got to learn how to pick up the blitz, who's blitzing and all that, right? And I heard he's done well doing that. He's really focused a lot on that and made sure he understood it and what he needs to do. And he reads the defense so he can protect his quarterback when he's in there for those situations. No secret how good he's going to be in the passing game. I mean, and that's where they're going to really have him as a weapon. Is going to be huge for Clemson, I think, because with a guy like that in the backfield, if you're a linebacker or safety, I mean, just think about it. You got to pay attention to what he's doing. And so look for Clemson to do a lot of 22 personnel, and they're going to you're going to see it. They're going to have 2 backs in this backfield, and you're going to see, and remember I told you about Josh Sapp. He's a wide receiver. And so you can line him up at wideout, and you can use Adam Randall as a wide receiver. He's not necessarily a running back. You can put him in motion, let the defense see what kind of coverage they're in. You can bring him back behind there. You can do a lot of different things with him in that position. And so, that's why I say, I think you're going to see Clemson line up, especially a few times against LSU. They'll line up in a 22 personnel look, and they're going to use Adam Randall to see what that defense is doing. So, not only for reading at that moment, but to give them reads later in the game as well. So it's going to be interesting. Because of him, he's going to be able to tell the tale on a lot of defenses because of his ability as a pass catcher and route runner. And that's a benefit when you have a running back like that.
Now, I know you're a Steelers guy, and
how did you guess that?
Steeler Will is your name on Twitter, and I know you think old school Jerome Bettis. The tight ends that you guys used to have, just freaking monsters in the run game.
Miller, yeah.
And I'm 22 personnel. That means you have to take some of your best receivers off.
Yeah, you probably take one guy out of there. It don't mean they're always going to be 22. I just think they're going to use it a lot more than people think. So on first down, I wouldn't be surprised on first down you see them in 22 personnel. And that's a down to do it, right? Or if they're in second and short, you're in 22 personnel, right? Because again, you want the defense to guess what you're going to be doing. And that's the whole point of it. And then it also puts the quarterback in the run game in those situations. So now not only is your linebacker worrying about number 9 and number 8, but he's also got to worry about what number 2 is doing. And so if you're a linebacker or safety, that's a lot of stress on what you're doing, and a lot of eye candy going on, right? And so that's what the 22 personnel does for you in those situations. Now, granted, when they're third and long, they're going to be more four wide, playing a lot of 11 personnel and stuff like that. But, I think on first down, you're going to see a lot of it. On second and short, you'll see a lot of it. Stuff in those situations and those situational things. You're going to see a lot of 22 personnel just because they got a guy like Adam Randall. And you mentioned the running game. He broke off a 67-yard run in practice scrimmage the other day. This is after he was supposedly hurt. So we hear he's hurt and he got minor injury, and then he comes back in the next scrimmage, and he breaks off a 67-yard touchdown run. So that's I think he's going to do okay. Yeah. We'll see. Now LSU is a very good defense, and I think like any defense, first thing you got to do is shut down the run. Make the quarterback have to beat you. That's always the name of the game in football, and we'll see if that happens. But I think LSU is going to be wanting to shut Clemson down in the running game first, and then see what they can do with Klubnik and those receivers.
All right, so we now get to, obviously you can make a case for Cade, but I think the best position group on this team is the wide receivers. Wesco leading the way there. The thing it's interesting is this is a young wide receiver grouping as well. So Moore, Williams, Wesco, 12, 1, and 0. Tell us a little bit more about them. And obviously LSU secondary is revamped. Mansour Delane from the ACC and all of that. So how do you think this matchup matches up in your eyes?
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun to watch it. Antonio Williams he can play the field or the slot. So you're going to see him and Wesco bounce in and out of those two positions. You can also bring Tyler Brown in, who was a freshman All-American 2 years ago, and really gives them some depth there at wide receiver. He's a little bit I described it the other day on my podcast. So you got Antonio Williams, who's more of a Amari Rogers kind of guy at receiver, right? And then Tyler Brown is more of an Artavis Scott. If anybody knows anything about those Clemson receivers, those are the comps that you would put those two guys at. They play the same position, but they play it totally different. Artavis Scott is more of which would be Tyler Brown is more of a physical wide receiver, likes to get after you, is not afraid to go across the middle and catch the ball. Got some speed. He can run away from you too. Then you got Antonio Williams, who's more of a not as physical of a guy, but he's got a lot of wiggle to him. And if he gets out in open space, he's going to burn your guys and he's going to run for a touchdown. Ask Texas. They saw that. He's a burner. Ask Florida State. They saw it. So that's kind of where you are with those two guys. And then TJ Moore, he's your boundary receiver. He can you send him on goes and or you throw him up the ball and he's going to go get it for you. I mean, that Texas game, he was unbelievable against Texas. They couldn't stop him. And then you got Bryant Wesco, who just is he's just a big play guy, man. That guy, if there's a guy who's going to have a 75-yard touchdown in this game, it's that guy. Because you send him on a go and I don't know if there's a safety or corner in the country that can cover him. He's so fast, and so he'd blow by anybody. Got some wiggle to him as well, and he's capable of having a game where he catches one ball for 12 yards, and he's capable of having a game where he catches 5 balls for 135 yards. And then Tristan Smith is the transfer from Southeast Missouri State. Man, all I hear in practice is about this guy's like, how good he is, and got these, he's making these one-handed catches. It seems like in every practice, and he's a tall receiver. Gets comparison to Mike Williams a lot. If you remember Mike Williams, so a real physical guy. Yeah. So it can high point the ball. Something Clemson hasn't had since T. Higgins back in 2019. So it's been a while since Clemson's had a receiver like that's got that height. He's got that T. Higgins kind of body too, but he's a little bit bigger, so he can run away from people. Where Mike Williams, Mike Williams wasn't going to run away from anybody, but T. Higgins, right. And that's kind of what he's like. He's a lot like, Mike Williams' body, but T. Higgins' ability. And it's kind of I know that's some big names I'm throwing out there as comps, but that's kind of what he reminds me of. He's kind of a combination of the both of them.
All right, let's talk 2.
Yeah, Cade Klubnik. Yeah. I think he's in prime to have a great year. I really do. Yeah. He reminds me of oh man, help me out here. The now plays at Denver quarterback.
Bo Nix.
Bo Nix, thank you. It reminds me a lot of Bo Nix. I got to see Bo Nix play in college. He wasn't ready at the time when he was at Auburn. And then by the time he went to Oregon, you just saw that progression. And by the time he played that senior year at Oregon, he was a different quarterback. And that's where Cade is right now. Cade, like his first year, just, he showed that potential, and you saw that in the ACC championship game, what he can be. But he had a lot of work to do, right? And then that sophomore year, a lot of receivers got injured. They were just banged up, and they just didn't have the numbers they needed to kind of let him do what he needed to do. I think he felt like he had to do a lot, so he put a lot of pressure on himself. He just didn't play within himself and within the system. And now he's back for a third year with Garrett Riley. I think that's huge for any quarterback. You go 3 years with the same offensive coordinator. That does nothing but help you. Last year, so people can understand his numbers, he threw for 3,600 yards, had 36 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He ran for almost another 500 yards and had 7 touchdowns. So he had 43 total touchdowns last year, and over 4,100 total yards. Those numbers in years past have got you invited to the Heisman Trophy finalist. He's the first guy to put up those kind of numbers that didn't get invited to a Heisman Trophy ceremony. So that's the kind of numbers he put up, but nobody knew because Clemson lost that game to Georgia, and then Clemson kind of fell off the radar there for a while, and so that's why nobody really knew what kind of numbers he was putting up. But man, he had a great year. Look at that: 43 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
That's unreal.
If your quarterback's doing that, you're going to win a lot of football games. I'm sorry, and now they got lucky on a couple of those. Like, the year before they had some bad luck with turnovers because Cade Klubnik led the country with 10 fumbles lost.
That's what I was going to ask. It was the craziest thing how many fumbles he had.
And it would be it wouldn't be like a fumble and then the defensive lineman just falls on it and they get the ball right there. No, those fumbles were picked up and run for touchdowns and stuff. It's like bounced right up into the hands of a defensive player. So you're like, okay, it was real extreme that first year, his sophomore year. Then last year it went real extreme the other year where he would fumble the ball and it bounced right back to him and he was able to get it. Right. So it was like real weird on how. So I think this year it kind of balances out with those. I think he'll probably give up a couple more fumbles than he did last year, but it won't be like it was 2 years ago where the weird things happened. They got the weird bounces. But he really did a good job taking care of the football last year. He completed nearly 66% of his passes last year. I think you see that increase and get better. And then I think you're going to see him, with these receivers, be able to throw for more yards. And if that run game is what I think it can do with this experienced offensive line, then I think, they have a chance to really be dynamic on offense. I think regardless what happens in the LSU game, this is going to be one of the top offenses in the country. This is going to be a top 5, top 10 offense. I mean, they were basically top 10 last year.
No. They're a very good offense.
Yeah.
What concerns
34-7.
What concerns you about this offense? Is it something stylistically?
Nothing.
No, nothing. So there's not.
The only concern about them is the depth at running back because you don't have anybody with any real experience behind Adam Randall. But those guys are better than they were last year, than they were with Phil Maffa. So they get Jay Haynes back. He looks like he's going to get back in time. I'll be interested to see if he plays against LSU. He tore his ACL in the ACC championship game. He's the next most experienced guy. Keith Adams Jr. is another guy they like, and they like David Uzme as well. But those guys were so young last year, and so that's why they were real worried, right, when Phil Maffa got injured. They're like, they feel a little better this year. Like, okay, these guys are older and wiser, and so they should be able to step up and help out if needed. But that's where the question mark lies. So that's the only concern on the entire offense. Other than that, offensive line is probably the best offensive line they've had in years. They got the most depth on the offensive line than they've had in years. They're as deep and good at wide receiver than they have been in the last 10 years, to be honest with you. They're better at wide receiver than they were as far as a collective in that room than they were when T. Higgins was there. They got more playmakers up and down than they did during those years. And those are really good offenses. So that's why I don't worry. Obviously, who's behind Cade Klubnik? And Dabo said the other day, Christopher Pazina, he's the backup quarterback. He's also now in his third year in the system, and it's supposed to be his team next year. And Dabo said the other day, Dabo didn't say we trust him. Dabo says I trust him. And if we happen to have him, other than when we want to use him, he's like he'll be ready to go if he's called on. So So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Vizina, it's going to be kind of like a Ty Simpson Garrett situation where, he was a 4-star top 100 QB and they want to hand it to him. But you think, let's just say Cade does go down in the season opener. You think he could give you enough to get you over the hump?
I mean, I don't know, but according to Coach Sweeney, yes. I mean, Coach Sweeney thinks, I would say if Clemson people would probably be nervous as can be if that happens, right? Because they haven't seen Christopher Zena play a game. I mean, he's never played. I mean, Cade Klubnik's been in front of him the whole time. It's a weird situation, dynamic. Clemson has a quarterback where you got a guy in Cade Klubnik who I believe is the only guy from his recruiting class, of quarterbacks in the country that stayed with his team. Like all the other top guys, they haven't stayed with the team they signed with initially.
No, the 2022 class, that was Wigman and all those guys.
Yeah, he's the only guy. Yeah. And so then Christopher Zena, how many backups do you know stay for 3 years? That had his pedigree coming out of high school where he's a 4-star guy, and a lot of people are really high on him, and he stayed at Clemson, all 3 years so far, and he's going to stay this year because he's going to get the job next year, they say. So, it's a different dynamic than what you see around the country.
Well, I want to get this straight because you are such a great guest and people have really enjoyed you. I even got texts from big supporters of the channel that they really like you. What is our history? When I did radio in South Carolina, I think you did a radio spot with me. I think that's our history. Yeah. Is that it?
Yeah, I think I came on your show. I can't remember what game it was or when I came in, but you asked me to come on and talk Clemson football with you, we had a good rapport.
Yeah, it was on ESPN Upstate. So what I'm about to do is I'm going to press you a little bit here, and I know you've been pressed before, so it's not going to be anything crazy. So there's such a big focus on LSU and season openers, but I keep going back to Clemson and season openers.
They ain't been good lately.
Right. So you've lost 3 out of your last 4, and I have a lot of skepticism with my guests when you say that there's not anything that concerns you offensively, but
other than running back,
fair.
Yeah.
But in those 3 losses, you put up 13 combined points in those 3 losses. And I understand 2 of those losses are to Georgia, but there's also a loss to Duke. And Duke's been good. They've averaged 9 wins over the past 3 years in the ACC and all of that. So does that concern you? Because there's so much on LSU in the season openers. Why have Clemson have had slow starts? Are you worried about that at all?
No, because that was last year or the year before, and this is a totally different team. I mean, that Georgia game, they're a totally different team from that Georgia game last year. And not that they would have beat Georgia last year, but if they would have executed better, that game would have been different. It would have been 34-3 or whatever it was, because they had opportunities to make plays, especially in the first half, and they didn't make them. They had one big play that got called back because Adam Randall, as a matter of fact, was lined up off sides. He covered up the tackle, and so they had to bring the play back, and it would have been Clemson would have got the first score of the game if that doesn't get called back. And then that's a different momentum part, right? I mean, not saying they win it, obviously, but I think they probably play better because now you got a little bit of Momo. And then there's a play and they ran it. What game did they run it in? I think they ran it against South Carolina. No, they ran it against Pitt. That's what they did. So there's a play where against Georgia where Klubnik's running outside, and if he waits on his guard, which is Tristan Lee pulling, waits on Tristan Lee just has a clear path to the end zone for an easy touchdown. Klubnik, though, at the time just doesn't execute the play the way he's supposed to, and he doesn't wait on his guard, and he takes it outside. And, of course, the Georgia linebacker runs him down, and he gets like a couple yards when it should have been a touchdown. Well, that same play they run against Pitt, and it goes for a touchdown. Because he did what he's supposed to do and wait on it. He gets the block, and he's gone. And, it's just things like that. They didn't execute last year early in the season. They got better as the year went on. And then also Georgia was really so good. I mean, it's Georgia. Come on. You're going to kind of throw those out the window when you play Georgia. And that 2021 you're talking about when they lost to Georgia in Charlotte, that Georgia team went on to win the national championship.
True.
And that, by the way, Georgia didn't score an offensive touchdown in that game either. that was a 10-3 game, and Georgia had a pick six, and that was the difference in the game. And then
JT Daniels and
yes.
DJU.
Oh my gosh, probably the worst two starting quarterbacks ever in a top 5 matchup, right? I mean, it was horribly. It was, oh my gosh, it was horrible. Worst quarterback play I've ever seen. This year, though, we're going to see great quarterback play in a season opener. It's going to be a whole lot better. And then the Duke game, that was Cade Klubnik's first year starting. I can't explain what happened in that game, man. It was I've covered this team and this game for a long time. I've been a sports writer for 28 years, and I never saw a game where one team would get down inside the 5-yard line 4 times and didn't score once. Didn't score not once. Twice got on the 1-yard line and didn't score either time. I've never seen a game where that's happened. They should have ran Duke out of the building in that game. And they just could not get the ball in the end zone when they got inside the 5-yard line. I've never seen it. And then they had 2 field goals blocked. So not 1, but 2. It was the darndest thing I've ever saw in my life. The only other game I could compare that to is when they played Florida State back in Deshaun Watson's freshman year. And they had 2 times they had the ball inside the 5-yard line against Florida State. No, 3 times. They got a field goal 1 time. And then they fumbled the ball that would have won the game. They would set up the winning field goal and would have won it in regulation. But he fumbled the ball. C.J. Davison did inside the 5. And then that, if I remember correctly, they were in overtime and they had the ball down at like the 2-yard line, and the center snapped the ball over Watson's head. They ended up having to go for it to try to win the game.
Yeah, okay.
You remember that?
Yeah. So, okay. I want to get to this, and this would be my biggest skepticism regarding Clemson, because I will say this, Will. I will be the only LSU YouTuber, at least I think I will be, that's actually picking Clemson to win this game. So I do think you guys are going to win this game. All right,
well, not me, but Clemson, because I don't play. Well, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Exactly. I think the team that you cover, and you are the Clemson. You are one of the 10 or 5 to 10 best Clemson writers. I know you want to be humble and all that stuff. You're great. I wouldn't have you on if that wasn't the case.
I appreciate it.
But this would be my biggest concern, is that, yes, Wes Goodwin out, Tom Allen in, massive upgrade. Massive. Okay. And I know it's tough because Goodwin's a Clemson guy, but I think, would you agree that Goodwin just wasn't what he needed to be?
Yeah. So I've known Wes since 2011 when he came in as a grad student at Clemson.
Right. So I know it's tough.
So Wes, like, I'm going to be honest with you. Ever see that movie, A Beautiful Mind? That's what Wes is as a defensive player. I mean, as a defensive person. Like he sees things like unbelievable. And he knows defense better than anybody I've ever seen in my life. But where Wes didn't do very well was, first of all, Wes didn't need to be on the field. He needed to be at the press box, because Wes can see the checkerboard or the chessboard better that way. Okay. So that was the first mistake Wes made. The second mistake Wes made was, Wes is not a coach. He's an analyst. He's a guy that, uses his mind and everything. He's not a guy that's rah and, hey, you got to do this and do this. It's not him. And so I think it was just a learning experience for him and Dabo. And Dabo gave him a chance, like somebody gave him a chance back in the day when Gene Stallings gave him his first job. And so that's all that was, is just Dabo, paying it forward, and it didn't work out. And I think Wes probably learned a lot from it. And I know Dabo did, and you move on. Right. And, but as far as a guy that knows defense, like Oklahoma's defense is going to be better this year because they're going to have Wes Goodwin up there doing his beautiful mind stuff.
Well, yeah, because I'd heard the same thing, like doing film studies, that it wasn't the ball knowledge, and that's the case for a lot of young coaches. Like, they know ball, they just don't know how to lead men. And honestly, the big thing, and I've learned this obviously being a big Blake Baker fan, because he's also on the youngish side, is that it's so hard for younger coaches to adjust without that experience of adjusting in game. And I felt like that was part of Wes's problem, where Tom Allen is definitely going to be better in that category. But for me, all right, I understand this is a a new season, but Clemson returns all this production,
Mm-hmm.
and they were not good versus the better teams on this schedule. And that's the problem that I have.
Well, let's break it down because I've heard this argument before, and I kind of
Okay, yeah, I would love to do it. Yeah,
yeah. Let's so tell me where they weren't good at.
Okay,
Louisville. We'll start there because that's where I think its first one is. So the Louisville game, yeah, they didn't play well against Louisville at all. But I've already said some of the reason why. First one is Phil Maffa, and the running game was banged up, and so they really didn't get the running. Now Phil Maffa finished with a lot of yards, but that all came in that came when the game was already decided. It was like already over, so it wasn't like really that's what happened when the game was going on. There was injuries to Tristan Lee. There was injuries to a couple other guys on the offensive line. Phil Maffa got banged up in that game. That's when he got his knee hurt, and that's when it all started for him. And then after that, he was never the same. And so, not that they were going to win that game anyway. I think Louisville just came in, and Clemson just was having a bad day at the office, and Louisville was playing well. And then Louisville did what I thought a lot of teams should have done that they weren't doing throughout the year, was take advantage of Clemson's weakness on the left side of that line. Defensive line, and they ran the ball to it every time, and guys were out of position. They weren't where they're supposed to be. Nobody was filling the gaps, and so it was like good play calling on Brahms' part to understand there's a weakness. I'm going to attack it and keep attacking it until they can stop it. They couldn't stop it.
But would you agree that you guys were just brutally outplayed in this game?
They were brutally outplayed in that game, but I really believe if they were to play again, it would be a different game. I think. Yeah. So that's why I said that game was an anomaly, just because some injuries happened on the offensive line and the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. But you give them credit. Like I said, Louisville beat them, and they beat them good that day. And so that's that one. Okay. That's a loss. That's why they lost it. Okay. They didn't play well. They lost the game.
All right. And I understand these are both road games. Virginia Tech at Pitt. You survived. Obviously, Pitt was an undefeated-ish team early in the year, but they were a little lucky. But to go on the road and back-to-back, I'll give you credit.
And those two games, keep in mind, Virginia Tech had a win streak going into that game.
Yeah, they were hot.
They were hot at that time. And Clemson was coming off that just embarrassing performance at Louisville the week before. And Clemson went up there to Blacksburg, had a field goal block that was returned for a touchdown. They lost another offensive lineman in that game, and they overcame it. And they overcame it and won the game handedly, 24-3. So now, granted, Virginia Tech had some injuries too, and that led to it as well. But still, you went up on the road and won the game. You give them that. The Pitt game, a lot of people bring this up. People forget Clemson was up 10 points in that game. Clemson was in control of that football game. They were going up and down the field on Pitt all day in that game. And then the third quarter came, and Clemson, Riley, where he really messed up on this was he tried to run the ball when he couldn't run the ball. You know what I'm saying? Really put his team in bad situations.
Maffa wasn't the same.
Right. So they're up 10 points at halftime, and he's trying to run the ball to kind of, kill some clock, shorten the game a little bit, when he really probably should have just kept attacking Pitt. That's what he should have done. But so what he did is he let Pitt back in the game by doing that. And then give Pitt credit. Pitt took the lead for just a second. But right when Pitt took the lead, what happened? So it goes right back down the field, scores, and wins the game, and then gets a big stop on defense to secure it. So Clemson won that game. Clemson was the better team in that game. Clemson was the better team.
I'll give you that.
And they had Clemson had control of the game for the majority of that game. Pitt only led once, and it was right near the end, and Clemson took the lead right back from it, right when that happened.
Right.
So,
but here's my problem: is the South Carolina game happened. Now, first
of all, let's talk about the Citadel game before that. They gave up 300 rushing yards to the Citadel.
Okay.
That was bad. That's where I thought you were going.
No, I was only focusing on the losses. I wasn't going to bring up Citadel, but
that's an FCS team, a bad FCS team that ran for over 300 yards.
So now you're I don't mean to say it this way. You're making my point for me here.
Well, I am in the way. Yeah.
Yes. So okay. Yeah, everyone sees results. Do I think this Clemson team is going to make the college football playoff and win the ACC? Yes. They would probably be the safest pick to go over. But what concerns me is, yes, you won the ACC, but I just don't know how good you guys actually played. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the ACC you guys played last year was horrid. True or false?
I think it was better than people give it credit for.
Oh, come on, Will.
No. No, here's why. Here's why.
You're
Here's
my
why.
guy, Will. You
Here's
played
why.
the worst
Here's
Florida
why.
State team to ever.
No, here's why. Let me tell you why.
No, go on. All right, yeah.
So Clemson, first of all, to your point, Dabo, I thought one of his best coaching jobs was last year. One of his best coaching jobs because that team to win the AC championship surprised a lot of us. We didn't see it either. So a lot of us were surprised too because I thought for him to keep that team together, for them to find a way to beat SMU when they gave up the lead and they ends up tying, I just thought it was his best coaching job to get them where they were despite the issues they had on defense. And they had a lot. And despite the last 6 weeks of the season, not having a true running game at all because of 3 injuries on the offensive line and their running back. They just had no running game at all, none. And so they manufactured with Cade Klubnik as much as they could running the football. And then they were just tossing around everywhere. Every team knew what Clemson was doing. And yet they still found a way to win the ACC and then give Texas all they had in the playoff. Now, I say the ACC was better. I'm not saying it was great. Don't get me wrong here. But you still had a 10-win team in Clemson. You still had an 11-win team in SMU. You still had a 10-win team in Miami. You had a 10-win team in Syracuse that nobody saw coming. You had a Georgia Tech team that was 7-5, but should have been 8-4 because let's be honest, they beat Georgia. Georgia just found a way to not let them.
Yeah, they choked. They choked. Yeah.
And not just that. It's just they call that one play not targeting. If that's not targeting, I don't know what targeting is. No. So Georgia Tech was pretty good, and then Duke won 9 games. Now, if that's the SEC, my God, we're calling it the greatest conference season in the history of all conference seasons.
But the reason that so many teams won because the bottom half of the ACC was so Kim Kardashian ass. It was so bad, and that's. But
wasn't Kentucky and Mississippi State and those guys Kardashian bad also?
No, like a Kentucky team beat Ole Miss.
That was their only win. They were 1-7.
Yes. Okay.
And Mississippi State sucked.
Yes, and then all the other teams in the SEC had
Oklahoma had its worst year in a half century.
Yeah, and they beat Alabama, a team
but they still sucked though.
They
were bad.
Yeah, I know.
They were 6-7.
Yes, but they still went on the road and beat Auburn. No, look, I will agree with you that the SEC we could pick apart, and I'm a 9-game conference game and all that. But my issue is like that Louisville team was not that great, and
I think they were pretty good.
They lost on the road to Stanford. Will
but they also went into Death Valley to beat Clemson. And that ain't easy to do. I don't care if Clemson's hurt or what. That ain't easy to do.
But that's why I have you on here because I have been labeled as like the I'm giving too much credit to Clemson because I am picking them to win this game. Mm-hmm. But I'm also looking at the ACC, and this is more so like a larger like viewpoint of how this is all going to work with the college football playoff and all of that. Mm-hmm. I see that because this is a rare instance where Clemson has all pretty much of your key guys that you don't have last year on this year's team. I could only count 3: Beringstall, the tight end, Maffa, the running back, and Barrett Carter. Mm-hmm. Would you say there was the only 3 key guys gone from last year's team to this year's team?
No, there's a safety. They lost their starting safety from last year.
Okay.
Safety, he was really good too. My RJ Mickens. RJ Mickens gone. Yes. He's a really good football player. He's gone, so they got to replace him as well. So
my apologies to RJ. What was he, number 12 or 23?
Number 9. Number 9.
Okay. Yeah. So my apologies to RJ's family if you are watching, because that is a big miss by me.
But 3-year starter. Yeah, he's
right. He was a good player. Okay, but you only missed 4 guys. All right. So I want to bring up a question that really digs at the issue because you've been on here forever. I appreciate it. You freaking love ball, and y'all better go follow Steeler Will. Okay. I think Dabo might have lost a bit from when he was at his peak. And let me tell you why. Because I follow my good friend Dave Bartu, and he tweeted out something yesterday that Dabo is -5 in his coaching effect metric, which means he has lost 5 games over the past couple of seasons that he should not have lost over the last 3 years. All right. And yes, I will give you credit that Clemson was ahead of schedule, and that should have been Miami's year winning the ACC, and you found a way to get it done. I give you a lot of credit towards that. But are you concerned that maybe Dabo has lost a little, or do you think he could still squeeze the most juice out of this roster and get this team to where it needs to get to?
Yeah, he can still squeeze them. Yes. Dabo, like I said, I thought last year was one of his best coaching jobs, especially that back half of the season, to get them to the college football playoff after the losses, the players they had that couldn't play, the key players that couldn't play, and to still get them there, to even act like you had a running game, which was basically just what it was. You were acting like it. I mean, Phil Maffa that guy shouldn't even been on the field. Much less pretending to act like he could play. So yeah, I mean, I think in this year's team is Dabo kept pointing to it like he thought this was the year they could really go on a run. And he pointed to it because they were going to be a veteran team. You're going to have a quarterback now in his 3rd year. You're going to have more playmakers than you've had before. And these are all guys Clemson's recruited for the most part. Every guy that I've named, for the most part, are Clemson brought them in as recruits and developed them for 3 years.
As in high school recruits.
High school recruits, and developed them as their own. And then they go and get Will Help to help them on the defensive end position that we just talked about. Because Dabo, hey, look, we got to fix this. And there's nobody coming in that can fix it right away. So we need to bring somebody in because we still got a couple of players we think we can develop, but we don't really want to count on them this year. We got to bring somebody in to give them that veteran leadership that could be an all ACC caliber player and can really help solidify that side while we develop these other guys and get them ready. Okay. So and he did that. Then he said, I made a mistake at defensive coordinator. I'm going to go get one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. I'm going to go steal Tom Allen from Penn State, which wasn't easy, by the way. And he went and stole him from Penn State. And now you see that he is now, I think what he's going to do with the defense is going to be night and day. Like you're going to see kind of a similar attack like Brent Venables had and a similar defense because they got the talent. They got 8 guys that are pro potential on that starting roster. 8, how many people had that? 8 potential pros starting for them on defense. So I think you look at that and, that kind of gets you excited. I think there's a lot of things that get you going for this Clemson team this year. And yeah, last year was kind of a weird year. I think they were ahead of schedule a little bit. And now I think with all the weapons they got on offense, and now you got a defensive coordinator that is going to get the best out of his players and playmakers he's got on defense, I think they're going to be much better. And imagine if this team improves by just 1 more yard rushing. I'll give you this stat. Last year, yards per carry, Clemson gave up 4.7 yards rushing per game, right? Okay. It was the most yards rushing per game. 1.7 yards per carry. It was the most yards per carry Clemson has allowed. One team has allowed since 1975. 50 years. Wow. 50 years since they've been that putrid in run defense. If they just improve that to 3.9, they win 3 games last year. They just go 0.6. They win 3 more games.
No, that's a big shift. But that's my thing.
So they don't got to be like 3.4 or 3.1. They just got to go from 4.5 to 3.9. If they do that, that's going to be 3 more wins. I'm telling you right there. And they're in position to make the college football playoff.
Few more for you. I could talk to you forever, Will. I didn't mean to keep you. Are you mad at me for keeping you so long?
No, you're fine, man. We're fine. We're good. Keep going.
Is your significant other mad at me, or
no? I'm single, man. This is why I'm probably single. So
Will is the DMs are open. Steeler Will, man. Before I get to the biggest Clemson question I wanted to ask you as far as their national championship futures. Should Mike Tomlin still be the coach of the Steelers?
Yes. Until he wants to retire. I think he's earned that right. Yeah, I think he's earned that right, which might be sooner than people think. I think Mike Tomlin's sort of like, he knows. He's not stupid. He talks about the standard at Clemson. And,
He's not won a playoff game since 2016, Will.
I know, but the Cowboys have only won, 2 playoff games since 1995.
But you're comparing the Steelers to the Cowboys, the biggest laughing stock in all of pro sports, despite them having $10 kajillion. You're still and do you believe Aaron Rodgers is going to lead you guys to the playoff? Aaron AARP discount double check ayahuasca Rodgers is going to lead you to the playoffs?
I don't know. I really don't.
I'm Steeler Will.
I really don't know. I mean, I'm being objective here. I mean, I want to say yes as a fan, but as a journalist, I got to see it to believe it. You know, there's still. I think the defense is good. I think the Steelers' defense is good, but our offense, we're one of the lowest paid offenses in the country, in the NFL, and so I got to see it to believe it from an offensive standpoint. And I'm not really seeing anything that gives me that indication right now. So. I'm sort of like, I'm a wait and see kind of guy with the offense and Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
I want to see kind of what they do. Let's get it like 3 or 4 games in, and then you ask me that question. I can tell you honestly, if they do that, if their offense comes out there and plays well with that defense, then yeah, because that defense is, I mean, I've always said it's legit, and the offenses suck so much, the defense is on the field so much, they get hurt. The more you're on the field, the more chance you get to get hurt. And that's happened to the Steelers the last few years because the defense is on the field freaking the whole game. And it just really teased me off, So, yeah, it's up to Aaron Rodgers. We'll see. I'm not going to say anything until I see it, though.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I think this is Tomlin's last hurrah. I think he's because they're putting all their marbles. If you talk about getting Metcalf, going out and getting Rodgers, the trade with Jalen Ramsey, and also getting Geno Smith. Those are like, okay, we're throwing all of our marbles in the bag. That's kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're putting everything on the table. We're all in.
Yeah. And
if you don't go get it, if you don't do it, then don't you really got to just step down and say, okay, I've done everything I could do. I got to turn it over to somebody else.
LSU legend Patrick Queen, friend of the channel, on that defense. I'm excited to see the Steelers this year. All right, Steeler Will is where you can follow him on Twitter. I'm guessing you're predicting Clemson to win this game. My question for you is, do they win the national championship?
Does Clemson win the national championship?
Yeah.
I'll say this much. I don't like answering that question because I don't think I can say who's going to win the national championship.
Yeah.
Because it's like this is a lot more like the NFL than it ever has been now.
Yeah.
So I think when you get in that Final Four, it's anybody's game. I really believe that. I think Ohio State proved last year. Hold on a second. I'm doing a tweet here. Some stuff's breaking as we're talking.
Oh, okay. Well, Will's breaking. That's fine. What's breaking? Is it monumental?
I'll just let you know when we get it here in a second.
Will's getting sources. He's getting the Schefter source coming in on the earphones. Let's go.
So real quick, I'll just say this before I go. I think he can.
I'll let you get to work.
Yeah. I think he can. I think Clemson can get to the semifinals.
Yeah.
I think they can. I think they can be one of those Final Four teams. And then after that, we'll see. I think it's just too hard to say. Like 2018, yeah, it was Clemson or Alabama. It was easier to say. 2016, it was Clemson or Alabama. It was kind of easier to say. It's not like that anymore. There's more teams, which is what we wanted in college football. We wanted more depth. So I think any one of those 8 teams that when you get to the quarterfinals can win it all. It's going to be a lot like college basketball when you get to that Final Four setting and stuff like that, which is exciting for college football that you're going to have more depth like that, I think, And I think the team who's playing the best and is the healthiest at the end of the year is going to win the national championship. That's just fair. That's how NFL is now, right? If you're the healthiest and you're playing the best, that's generally the team that wins.
Right. I'll say this. I do think it's a massive disappointment if you guys don't make at least the semifinals.
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah.
I don't have a problem saying that. Yeah.
Right. Well, Steeler Will, we appreciate you. I didn't know we were going to go this long. You were just fire. People
appreciate it, buddy.
People loved and hated you. And if you need me to do any of your channels, I will happily do it, man.
All right, appreciate it. Yeah, might call you out on that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Steeler Will, we appreciate you, man. Go break that news.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. Thanks.
All right. Y'all please go follow him. I did keep him long, but good first-time guests are always good. I saw a few of you saying that, hey, he was not paying attention to you. I could tell that there was something going on. I don't know what it is. I'll check his Twitter feed in just a second. But unless you disagree with the guy, he doesn't mind people like disagreeing with him in the chat. That's fine. Obviously, it got testy when I pushed back on how the season actually unfolded, but always be respectful for our guests. If you want to push back like Jace Max does and a few of you others did, do it based on his arguments, because I could tell that he wasn't being disrespectful to me. Okay. Now, if he had been doing that the whole time, I kept him on for an hour plus. So always, especially if a guest has given us that much time. So there you go. Jared, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate you. And thank you to the super chat for Mr. J Smacks. Dabo does not let the media know anything. I don't think many people truly know this team. All right. So let's go step by step here with Jace Max, who's become one of my closest friends in the chat here. Appreciate Jace Max. Appreciate everyone that came to Monroe yesterday for the PHO get together at the Monroe Card Show. I don't know if we're going to be doing another card show during football season. There are other card shows that go on. It's just hard for me to commit to those. So when I go do a card show, you can ask Jace Max or anyone. I set up pretty much all of my collection, and it's constant. All right, it's just constant. So I appreciate everyone that came, and shout out to the Parks family for having me. Okay, now I meant to say it's a Steeler Will. He doesn't know I am sending this to him. Okay, Klubnik card. Okay. I do agree with this first point. Dabo does not let the media know anything. I don't think many people truly know this team. All right. So part of the reason why I said the Dabo thing, why I think he's lost it. Now, true story. I had one of the best interactions I've ever had with an A-list coach with Dabo Swinney a few years ago at a Pelicans game. Now, I've shared this story. I think it was like 2 years ago on a stream I shared this story. I was drunk. I was hammered. And I used to wear it. I still have it. I think my wife threw it away because she got tired of seeing it. I was wearing a tiger shirt. It's like a full screen printed tiger shirt. It's a tiger roaring. And Dabo said, I like your shirt. And I talked to him at a Pelicans game. And we took a photo. It's blurry somewhere in the universe. But you know what? I know Dabo's taken a lot of heat for, quoting scripture quite a bit. And then at the same time, some of the other things regarding the state of college football and all the biblical quotes and jokes are funny. But, I think the issue at Clemson for me is Dabo is Clemson, right? If you look at like Alabama, yes, Saban kind of became Alabama, but Saban was always, chasing Bear Bryant. They Clemson had success, but they didn't have like Bear Bryant success. What Dabo has done at Clemson is so unfreaking believably impressive. Really the only guy who has done more for a single program over the past couple of decades is Saban at Alabama. And I do think the job that Dabo did at Clemson is closer to the job that Saban has done at Alabama. Now, I know that sounds hyperbolic, but Saban actually is an X's and O's mastermind, right? Saban actually went to Alabama that has great infrastructure. And Saban, of course, had already won a national championship at LSU, and he knew what it took before he got to Alabama, and that thing got into hyperdrive. Dabo was just a hire that nobody liked, position coach, rah-rah guy, never really was a coordinator or a play caller, and the guy just knows how to coach. The problem is this really is the first offseason that Dabo really did some things that made him uncomfortable, which is the transfer portal and firing one of his own, which was Wes Goodwin, right? And I give him a lot of credit for that. But as far as like Dabo's relationship with the media, the local medias at quite a few beats are oftentimes at the mercy of the coach who coaches at the program, right? And I have given Brian Kelly a lot of kudos for how much access he gives LSU, right? If you want a deeper dive and someone who is way better at answering this, I would highly recommend listen to the end of our Mike Scarborough conversation, who's, it's what he does. He goes to everything LSU media related. It is not like that. I've gone through a few other programs that have given zero access to media. So, I give Brian Kelly a lot of credit. I also give Dabo credit. I mean, I think mostly media is given decent access to Dabo. But Dabo, of course, is very protective of his program. And this is basically his program. And Jason asks, to the second part of the super chat, you can also make the case that I don't think many people truly know this team. Well, we really don't know anything about anybody. You can make that same argument about so many different teams. I would actually go opposite of this. I think we actually know quite a bit about Clemson as far as their strengths and weaknesses compared to other teams because they do return so much production. All right. Not knocking him, but it's always excuses with Clemson. I do agree. And that's why in the testy part of the interview, I didn't think he thought I was going to push back as much as I did on some of the things. Y'all, as much as you might want to magic fairy dust believe that Tyler Shuck is going to be a good quarterback for the Saints, I sincerely doubt it. I sincerely doubt that he's going to be a good quarterback. He took Louisville on the road and they beat Clemson, and that was Clemson coming off a bye. Now we can get into the discussion of, well, a lot of teams weren't good off a bye last year in college football. Maybe, I don't know exactly why that was the case, but that Louisville loss was, to me, devastating for Clemson for this reason. They were pushed around. They were pushed around. And I understand that the Phil Maffa thing is a thing, but it wasn't as if Louisville had Isaac Garindo back there, right? They didn't have. Louisville has had very potent backfields with their quarterbacks and RBs, right? There's a deeper cut running back that left Louisville the year before and is like a backup for the Texans now, who I also think was good. Neither one of those guys were on that team last year, and they were able to push people around. So, when he was going through it, you guys saw, and I hate when this happens, and Will was great. Don't get it twisted. But I was like, hey, Will, when you really break down Clemson's schedule, and you really break down how good of a coaching job Dabo did last year, sure, winning the ACC the way that he won it, and with that being such a young team, Clemson was such a young team, but that's part of the reason why they have so much production returning. I was only bringing up the losses. All right. I was like, hey, let's just break down the losses. I wasn't breaking down Citadel that was able to run the ball on them. So it's a problem. It's something. It is something regarding Clemson. Okay. As far as, to me, and I'll pull it up again. I'll pull it up again, this 2024 schedule, and we're going to get to a few more of your comments. And since we are so close to the season, if y'all want to go all night tonight, I'm down. I do have to drive quite a long. I've been driving so much. Tomorrow I'm getting to do something really cool for the SEC channel. It's for it's a meeting for some of the other teams that I cover. I'm really excited about that. But I don't mind going until midnight tonight, y'all. I really don't give a damn. I mean, we're so close to the season. Brian Kelly might be watching right now and saying, Carter, come on. I just got done breaking down some film. The chat is lit tonight. BK, I'm not letting you down, bro. We'll go all night. I'm not letting you down. But you go through this. NC State, not that great of a team last year. All right. And this was NC State, I believe, after their quarterback was hurt. Now, NC State had some other good players. One transferred to Texas A&M, one transferred to us. But they were not a good team last year. Stanford was awful last year. So the team that Clemson beat badly here, this Stanford Cardinal team, ended up beating Louisville later in the season. Florida State, worst Florida State team of all time. Not even close. And it's not like you just blew the brakes off of them. At Wake Forest, not a great team last year. Virginia, 48-31. Was Virginia good last year? I guess they're okay. But that's also a coach that Dabo knows better than any other human being on the planet. Tony Elliott, of course, coming from that Clemson coaching tree. So off a bye week, Louisville, okay, you lose. Virginia Tech was a good team last year. An underachieving good team. But that was a good bounce back to go on the road and beat Virginia Tech. The Pitt game was kind of weird. Pitt, were they an overrated team in some ways because their undefeated record was early to start the season was a little misleading? Sure. Citadel, okay, kind of a weird game, blowouts. But yeah, you did have the rushing defense issue. We go to South Carolina. The problem to me wasn't necessarily the defense versus South Carolina because Sellers just was superhuman. He really was Cam Newton, Jaden Daniels level. So, when a quarterback's that hot, sometimes he's just going to find a way to win. It was what was happening offensively that concerned me. They just could not move the ball. So much of what they did versus South Carolina in that game was just QB run game with Klubnik. Receivers struggled in that game. It was weird, right? So, and then the SMU game happened while the ACC championship game. And then the Texas game, the only thing that I wanted to bring up regarding the Texas game, okay, is that Cade Klubnik, was really good in that game. All right. So if you want to talk about all-time great quarterback playoff performances, there weren't really a whole lot of those in this last playoff, and you can make a case that Cade had the best one, right? He really kept them in that Texas game. There was a throw in the first drive of that game where he was rolling to his left, throwing against his body. That was absolutely positively ridiculous, okay? So I got to be real, man. I am of the belief that Cade is very good. I really do believe it. But you can also go through and do the same thing, picking apart when he played the better defenses. Texas game was really good, though. I mean, I keep going back to that Texas game. He was fan-freaking-tastic in that game. So, I just don't know. Cade Klubnik can win. Klubnik can win the Heisman, but I am not so sure he is on this all-time great quarterbacks we faced scale, if you will. Do I see a world where he can go out there and play so damn good and there's nothing we can really do about it? Yeah. This could be the case for this LSU defense. Let's just say the LSU defense has a good but not great game, and we lose a game 31-24 versus Clemson. Well, you can go back to the 2023 LSU opener versus Florida State. And I saw Alexander super chat something about this a little bit earlier. And you are right, the ACC did go over kind of a rough postseason. You are right about that. But, the LSU offense, if you really paid attention, they were really good versus Florida State. It wasn't just a BTJ garbage time touchdown. They were really good. They were scheming things open to Trey Bradford of all people. But Jayden played really well in that game. All right. It just, we're playing the best version of Florida State since Jameis. So now we get to Clemson. This is by far the best version of their team since Trevor. Let's go to John. He says, the guest obviously loves Clemson. Good, no problem, but I feel better about winning the game. Yeah, let's address this. Nuss is better. Is Klubnik better than Jordan Travis? I would say they're about even. Obviously, Cade is just a far better NFL prospect because of his raw athleticism. He's faster and just has a far better arm. But as college quarterbacks, I would say they're about even, if we're being honest. So how can you say Cade was good in the first half of the Texas game? Okay, so we did a film study on it. First drive was just ridiculous, okay? Then the offensive line started to fall apart, and there wasn't really a whole lot he could do. I do agree there were some shaky moments mixed in there, but his defense didn't do him a whole lot of favors. And then, you get into the second half of that game, and they had I say that they had an interception, I believe, that was being returned, and there was a blindside block, and then they couldn't convert in the red zone. I don't know, John, you're making me want to go recut the film study now, because maybe he wasn't. Maybe I'm overrating what he did in the Texas game. I don't know. I want to go back and redo though, because John, you really do push me, and I'm fine to be proven wrong. But for me, I felt like that offensive line just got absolutely overwhelmed, and that Clemson defensive line got overwhelmed. And here's the thing. I felt when you went into the Clemson and South Carolina game last year, Clemson being at home, it felt like South Carolina athletically was just as good, if not better, than Clemson in that spot, right? So it's a weird thing, and maybe we are getting to and I'm talking to myself here, because I feel watching both these teams as much as I've watched them, I do feel Clemson wins this game 60-ish% of the time. But that does not mean LSU can't win that game. And not just being political. That's why I'm picking Clemson to win this game. But as AP pointed out a minute ago, me picking Clemson to win this game makes you guys feel better about LSU winning the game. Lucky Eastside says, yes, y'all are hyping Clemson up too much. Well, John, yeah. I mean, maybe I do. I go back. All right, so he had the fourth down conversion in the red zone. That was really good, extended the play. It was an open throw. Then they had the flood concept that he almost overthrew, but it was still a really good throw in the second half. Maybe I need to go rewatch that whole game, but I don't know. You can watch a film study. Alexander, thank you for all your super chats. He brings up Tristan Lee was getting worked by the Texas Edge guys. So yeah, let's talk about Tristan Lee. All right. Here's the thing about Tristan Lee. I don't want to get into it because the details are a little foggy for me, but the way I understood it was when he signed during the early recruiting period, but then committed after the early recruiting period to Clemson in the Under Armour All-American or the Army All-American, whatever it was. And because he signed in the early period, he kept it under wraps until the actual signing day or the actual announcement in the bowl game. So the reason why that was a big deal is that even though he knew he was already signed to Clemson, he still allowed the other schools, including us, I might be totally wrong on this, to keep recruiting him. Right? So we were just still making phone calls saying this, and he knew the whole time, and he didn't say, hey, I'm done, in hopes that didn't get leaked. So his announcement still had pop, if you will. But nobody on this team was around then, and he was obviously a 2021 recruit. That was a Garrett class, so let's go to Sibley. Texas blew Clemson out. Never thought Texas was losing. Clemson scored points on the first drive. Let's go to Jay Smacks. Carter, what actually makes you think Clemson wins this? Like, what on our team is going to inhibit us from winning this game? Okay. So Clemson's best players on their defense will be lining up in front of our biggest question marks. All right. So we have big question marks on our offensive line. Big. There will more than likely be someone at left guard lined up for us that had a below average. And I'm not talking about like below average in terms of like slightly below average. I'm talking about below replacement level starters at left guard. We have two different options there if we decide to go in that direction. And where Clemson's most talented player, which is Peter Woods, I will give Will a lot of credit. As much as I gave Peter Woods all the credit in the world, I did criticize him in the beginning because he was inconsistent in terms of his play shape and how much he had to rotate him out. We'll kind of called him out saying, hey, he needs to be more consistent. He needs to keep his body in tip-top shape. But where he lines up a good bit of the time is in front of the left guard. And that's one of the big question marks for our team. Now, what I would also say is maybe this Clemson secondary and me leaving R.J. Mickens' name out because he was a good safety. That is 4 total Clemson players that they lost from last year's team that were good players. And that means that's a lot of returning production that they have coming back. So I do think our biggest question mark is one that will have issues. And you also have to remember, this is not a game on a neutral field. This is a game on the road at night at their place. Okay? So that is something. One thing I will say, though, Jay Smacks, and this was actually a big failure for me because, you know, historically in the NFL and in college, special teams can be very volatile year to year, more so than offense and defense. Clemson has always had great special teams, always, in particular field goal kickers. I believe they are returning their field goal kickers. I normally don't like to look at special teams until day of. So maybe one of you guys can enlighten me. Nolan Hauser looks to be their kicker. And he is back from last year. Kid has a freaking bazooka. Had the best kick of the year, arguably, last year versus SMU to win that game. Okay? 56-yarder. So they have really good special teams. We have good special teams. They have a good clutch kicker. We have a good clutch kicker. Okay. But, you know, the guy that's making the most news or not the most news, but he's been a great player during spring and a great player during fall. He is one guy on this team that could say, hey, my best game of my career was against Clemson, and his name is Barian Brown. He's one guy on this team that could say that. So Alexander says he had 5 kicks blocked last year. Alexander's on top of his stuff, man. He's on top of his stuff. Now, something else that I do want to mention as far as Wesco is concerned, right? So Wesco is a very good wide receiver. Very, very, very good. I do think, and one thing that was interesting in his own commentary, not mine, Will, all right? He mentioned Wesco, and he was a true freshman as well, and that's one area where you can absolve him of difficulty. Wesco was kind of bullied versus Texas. He struggled getting open in that game. For me, I feel as if he can disappear at times, and that's going to happen, obviously, when you have other weapons. But there is a growing piece of me as far as these Clemson receivers that I think LSU's corners will hold up a little bit better than one would think. And I know that goes against all of my commentary regarding this group last year. All right. But Antonio Williams, 75 catches. The next highest returning receiver in terms of receptions is TJ Moore with 45 and Bryant Wesco with 41. He was a very feast or famine deep ball receiver. All right. So it is interesting. One matchup that does concern me, J Smacks, is if we're going to do if we're going to play Harold Perkins at the star, what they're going to do is force him to play out wide in space where he is lined up over a slot receiver. All right. You don't have to do that, though, if you bring a safety down, which DeMarcus Cooley is more than comfortable in doing because that's what he did mostly at NC State, and have him essentially go man-to-man versus a slot. The problem is, if you do that, you only have one deep safety, and that opens you up for go balls down the sideline. Well, if you can lock up the sidelines with Delane and Pickett, you will have success defensively. And what I do disagree with Will, and I didn't push back against this because it was so early in the interview and I had so many other topics, I would force Clemson to run the ball first instead of allowing deep shots. I would, right? Let's see if they can run on our front. You know, what I would say as far as a guy like Bernard Gooden, the camp reports have said this. Players on the defensive line have said this. Bernard Gooden himself has said this. If he is playing as well as he is playing versus camp, there are two schools of thought. The first is you are worried that the LSU offensive line might just not be any good because Bernard Gooden is, and you got to remember, in media viewings of practice, so this is limited practice for some of this media. Every time they go out there, he's making a play. Every single time. Every single time Bernard Gooden is out there, he is doing something to cause straight hell for the other team. Every single time. That is so hard to do. I don't care if your offensive line just is ass. So you do worry about that. But also, if Gooden is playing this good and he is this hot and he is a fifth-year player, I would play with as many light boxes as I can and see if this Clemson offensive line, which I think does return a lot of snaps, but I am not sure if they're like a road grading offensive line. I would like to see if they can run on us. I would present them 6-man boxes, which is deadly because Kate Klubnik in the pull read game, it's tough because, you do want to bring an extra hat in there to defend against this. But I would go opposite of and force them to run on us instead of giving them very favorable looks in the pass game. Okay. The details, Sam, which is more details on the tight end getting the DUI suspicion arrest. So there you go. Yeah, Lucky Eastside, I've already done a Peter Woods film study. It's up on Patreon. Let's go to Marshall Law. Is that your real name? That is a crazy name. How's your brother Ty doing? That's a football joke. Marshall said, I just want to comment that we honestly, LSU beat ourselves worse than any opponent we played. And welcome to the channel, Marshall. I would disagree with that. I would. Yeah, you could look at some things like such as LSU was a very penalized team on offense in particular last year. Lots of false starts and all of that. Sure. Yeah. But, I do think we were fortunate to win some of the games that we won last year. So I would actually think partially to the opposite, respectfully, because there were games that I felt we were outplayed, but we found a way to win. And that's all that matters. And that could happen here. That has been, I will give Brian Kelly a lot of credit to this. Some would say this is more luck than anything else, but BK has won quite a few games during his career and at LSU where his team does not play the best. There was a lot of those in 2022, and there's a few of those in 2024. I say a lot, but in 2022, you make a case versus Mississippi State. You can make a case versus Auburn. You can make a case versus Arkansas, where we didn't play the best, but we found a way to get it done. And there's skill in that, right? Some luck, but there's a lot of skill in that as well. Okay? And here's the thing. Like John did a minute ago, you can push back on any of my analysis. Anything that I could do. You can go in the comment section. You can always message me. Actually, I went on a show in Austin. It was actually recorded like months ago, and it was released today. I forgot the name of the interview off the top of my head. I retweeted it if you want to go see it. But, yeah, I say this about LSU all the time. Even with the concerns on the offensive line, I go through the position groups on this team. And one guy that has transformed how I do football coverage is actually a fantasy guy named Mike Clay. And Mike Clay, all he does that helps me out is he goes through every position group in the NFL. It's way easier to do this in the NFL than in college. But he goes through every position group, and he grades them on a scale of 1 to 10. And what he does a good job of is he puts it on a chart, and you're able to see who is under 5, right? Which position groups does he consider to be bad? All right. It's a tough thing to do. Obviously, it's a very subjective exercise that he does. And for me, the only position group on this team that I would consider to be under a 5 is offensive line. I have a tough time believing quarterback is going to be anything under an 8. Running back, anything under a 7 with what Caden Durham did last year. And once again, he's looking at, and I'm looking at this right now in terms of position groups. Wide receiver, anything under a 7 really wouldn't make sense. Tight end, anything under a 6 or 7 I could hear out 6. Anything under that wouldn't make sense. Go to the defensive line. Anything under 7 doesn't really make sense. Linebacker, really anything under than same thing, 7 doesn't make sense. Secondary, anything under 7 doesn't make any sense. Now you could make a case that outside of quarterback, offensive line is the second most important position to not great at, but it's a bunch of new guys stepping in. Maybe they are good. We don't know. So I was not in that position last year. I was not. And it got labeled as me coping and making excuses for Blake Baker because I was a Blake Baker glazer going into the season, how much I wanted him to be the DC. But, I didn't feel the defensive talent was where it needed to be. I felt the defensive line going into last year. I feel comfortable in my analysis from last year that unit was going to be a 5 or worse. And they were around there, probably a 6 with Swinson having the breakout season that he had. Then at linebacker, I had some concern, but the secondary was where I had major concerns. And I felt, based on my analysis, I would have given them a 3 going into last year. And then a running back, we felt so good about Caleb Jackson. I would have given them probably 6 or 7. Same thing with Garrett. But when you start to break that down, I felt as a position group, I had 2 different position groups that I would consider to be under 5, right? And it's hard to win games when you're under 5 out of 10 in terms of a position group, okay? Yeah, Cody, you're actually a big Steelers fan too. I saw you in here a little bit earlier. Okay. Let's go to Nick. Welcome to the channel, Nick. Oh, look at this. Oh God, we gotta blow up. We gotta blow up this cutie patootie right here. Classic. Look at the kitty patootie. Look at that underbite on Nick's dog. And what does the bib say? Oh, that's so cute. Look at that. What does it say? A little extra? Oh my God. Look at that snaggle. Look at that snaggle. How did I feel Tyree Adams played versus Baylor? I did fine. The thing about the Baylor game is it was a bowl game. And on top of that, Nick, and this isn't a cop-out, but Garrett was unconscious in that Baylor game. Like, he was so ridiculously good that, if your quarterback plays at that level where he's making M1 mixtape tour throws, it really doesn't matter. It's also different as well because the weird thing about the Baylor front is it's an Aranda front. So that front plays a lot differently than a traditional 4-man front, right? It's not a penetrating front, if you will. Now, you still had to match up. I think the grades on him in that game from PFF were fine. But, as with most bowl game data, you always need to be skeptical, if you will. In other words, and this is a trend I've noticed in the SEC, a lot of SEC offenses have career days in bowl games, right? It's part of the reason why I'm fading Marcel Reed a little bit for Texas A&M going into this next year, even though there is a lot of hype behind him. His 2 best games were bowl games. So we'll see. But, yeah, Nick, I'm fine with Tyree. It is a tough matchup, but I do also think there are creative ways you can do to help him out versus TJ Parker. Okay. Sibley, oh, come on now. Let's go. Specialty Cable went to LSU together. I think I took this photo of you at Fred's. I'm kidding. I didn't. I wouldn't shock me, though. What's got you worried about this year? Well, if we want to talk about the year, it is the schedule. There could be a world. I say could be. There is a very likely world. One more likely than we would like to admit, that LSU loses one of two versus Clemson and Florida. Okay. Here's my thing. And Jace Max saw this yesterday, like how thorough I try to be with my prep with shows. I have like just all these sheets. This is actually my fantasy sheet right here with all the week 17 schedules on there. But you can see right here, I've done probably like 3 different iterations of SEC schedules, listened to as many preview pods as I can, looked at R-Lands, and R-Lands depth charts can be a little inaccurate. But I'm in a spot now where one of our guests, Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered, released an LSU schedule and how he thinks the season is going to play out. And for me, this would be the perfect LSU season. I'll go through or actually, here it is right here. Okay. Let me go to here. And if I reuse this as my Tuesday night points, y'all feel free to call me out on it. But sometimes I like to prep out like different topics for the week. But this is going to be one of them. Okay. This would be the perfect LSU season for me because I want to avoid playing in the SEC championship game. Yes, so I am indeed cheering for some LSU losses this year. But if you were to tell me that we were to win our first 8 games, but lose 2 of our last 2 versus at Alabama and at Oklahoma in true road game environments, that would put us at 10-2. That would probably kick us out of the SEC championship game and probably also not have us in the top 4 college football playoff seeds, but very likely have us at 5, 6, 7, or 8 hosting a playoff game in Tiger Stadium. Because one of my dreams is LSU hosting a playoff game, right? Tiger Stadium is the mecca of college football. We want a playoff game. It's the only thing that we don't have at Tiger Stadium. We have all these legendary games. Lose to Bama, I'll take it. Lose on the road versus Oklahoma, I'll take it. I would prefer us lose that game to Oklahoma instead of playing another week. Because if we only lose to Alabama and we're 11-1, we're going to the SEC championship game, which means jack shit. It doesn't mean anything anymore. The teams that played in conference championship games, I know it's just a 1-year sample size, but it makes sense, right? It's one extra game that you have to play. Now, Alexander says, I'd like to host a playoff game, but I'd rather be the first 16-0 team. True. Yeah. But guess what? I don't think we'll ever see one. I'm serious. I don't think we'll ever see one. At least I don't think so in the near future. Let's go to the Philippines. You rated the tight end 6 or 7 under the secondary. Yeah, it's more of a respect out of Mason Taylor because he was just good at everything. You know, you got to have one of those guys prove that they can block. Whether it be Bauer Sharp or Trades Green. Bauer Sharp was very inconsistent as a blocker last season, but I do think he'll be better in that department, especially with his position coach having an offensive line backdrop. And Trades Green, I think, will be a better blocker this year as well, which is why I've mentioned Donovan Green's name a whole lot. And look, Donovan Green's not really been like a ginormous factor. He's not really made a whole lot of buzz, but practically I could, it's one of my, I have bold calls. It's one of my bolder calls that he could be a bigger part of this team than we would think. But yes, that would be my dream season. 10-2, us hosting a playoff game, getting hot, and winning the Natty. Of course, I would prefer 16-0. Who wouldn't? But the worst thing would be a one-loss team that also has to play in the SEC championship game. Who gives a rip if you win it? The teams that won it last year did not fare well. I don't want a first-round bye. I want a first-round playoff game. I want Shaq with TNT broadcasting from the sidelines. Robbie Compton, thanks for the follow on Twitter. I don't know if you followed from the account or from the stream. Okay. All right, we'll do a few more, and then we'll skedaddle. Oh, it's season. We're 2.5 hours in. I don't give a damn. Like I said, we will go to midnight. We'll go to midnight. I don't really care. I really don't. Brian Kelly expects the most out of his team now. I want to share a story that so Joey Aguilar has been officially named the Tennessee starting quarterback. Now it's expected. I want to share a story I'm cheering about in the NFL. Okay. This NFL draft class, it had Jackson Dart that was like a top 100 quarterback or whatever. Shador was an underrated recruit. He was like a 4-ish, 3-star, whatever. But I'm cheering for two quarterbacks in particular. You want to cheer about an underdog story, it's Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans. I'm not a Miami fan. I'm not necessarily even a Cam Ward fan. I grew up a Titans supporter because Steve McNair was one of my favorite quarterbacks, right? And God, I love Aaron McNair. I really do. And, well, there's history with LSU and the recruitment of Aaron McNair. So he goes to Alcorn and obviously had the career that he had. And Cam Ward obviously is not that level of runner, but as a thrower, he's so talented. And he's a 0-star recruit. But there's a quarterback I am in love with in the NFL. He is slower than molasses. He can't avoid sacks to save his life. But if you're talking just straight pocket quarterbacks, like guys that can't move at all, the third stringer for the Minnesota Vikings, 0-star recruit. Actually, I take that back. 247 had him ranked as the 3,693rd ranked recruit. He played at like some D2 school and then transferred up, played at Minnesota this past year. And when it comes to just seeds from the pocket, like I said, he can't avoid a single rusher. He has no elusiveness at all. But holy hell, he is a fun watch at QB. There's a quarterback that went to Oklahoma who's like him. His name is Jet New. He's out of Utah, and he was a late flip from Oklahoma State to Oklahoma. Reminds you of Max Brosmer. He is so much fun to watch. Like, he is so fun. Like, you literally see him. Okay? It's how most of us would have to play at the quarterback position. Not a single one of us would ever have 1/1000th of the athleticism of a Patrick Mahomes or Jaden or someone like that, or Burrow, because they can actually move. Max Brosmer can't he literally cannot elude anything. So his throws have to be so perfect. And it's so fun. Like, it's so fun. Even in preseason, it's so fun to watch him seed, man. Pause. That is the most pause situation of all time. This is what happens. Oh, man. Oh, man. So fun to watch him see. But he does throw just perfectly floated darts, if you will. Okay. Alcorn, let's go. Let's go. Yeah, I want to go till midnight tonight. I got a steak in the oven, though. I smell it. And I have to drive 2.5 hours tomorrow. And 2.5 hours back. And then the wife says, hey, can you service the vehicle tomorrow? Sure. I don't have anything else to do tomorrow. I'm excited, though. Now, I want to talk about good people. All right. So I picked this card up, and J Smacks saw this this deal go down, and I picked this card up at the card show yesterday. Jordan Poole, he's with the Pelicans now. Played with Steph Curry, obviously won a title there, and Jordan Poole is the major collection of my favorite sports card influencer, who gives out a bunch of cards, and he's also a teacher. His name is Tyler. And this card it's got like an actual diamond in it. These flawless cards are so nice. A little out of my budget, but this is, not some super expensive card. And Tyler's such a good dude. I just wanted to get it to him, right? And I kind of want to give out. Let's give out, once again, this isn't as big as this Jordan Poole card. We've had such a great live stream tonight. I want to give out a Jaden Daniels card. Okay, got some big PHL news coming up in the next week. Okay. We'll be releasing a bunch more short form content. You're going to love it. Who deserves this Jaden Daniels card? Actually, I want to give the Jaden Daniels card to someone who really pushes me to be great, and that is a guy I don't know anything about him, but I want to know more about him or her. I don't know which. Alex is a gender neutral name. Boom, Alex, I'm sending you a Jaden Daniels card. If you're still watching. Send me a message. Shout out to all our super chatters tonight. Harry's become a friend of mine. Sibley is also a friend of mine. And J Smacks, of course. I talk to Sibley and J Smacks weekly. Talk to Jared weekly, who also super chatted. All right. So, Alex, congratulations. I wish it was Jaden in a LSU uniform, but Arizona State-ish uniform. It is kind of burgundy and gold, so it is kind of commandery, if you will. But congrats, Alex. You just got to send me an email, powerhourlsu@gmail.com with your address, because you really pushed me. You pushed me to be great, and I'm going to remember you with your comments and pushing back on me and all that stuff. Not necessarily pushing back on me, but really adding to the conversation. You deserve it. And it's not just because you super chat. I pay attention the best I can to comments, okay? Now, it is so important as we hopefully gain more partnerships. There's one more thing I want to say at the end of this. You must, if you're in the Lafayette region, in the need of physical therapy. It might not be you. It might be your meemaw, papaw, child. LabortTherapy.com. Please go book an appointment today or follow him on social media. Send him a message on Facebook. Tell him thank you for supporting PHL. We literally couldn't do it without him. Seriously, labortherapy.com. Not only are they really good at their job, they're my guy Thomas is my brother in Christ, man. He was my closest prayer buddy when I was at LSU. So, and the Lord knows I needed it. And he came in at the right time to be one of our big partners, as did Jaron Thomas at Zion Imaging as well. So book today, Zion 360. Okay? So there you go. Now, go to Patreon, patreon.com/LSU football. We have gained 3 new patrons in the last week. They begin to trickle in as we get closer to season. You get access to the Discord community. Let's shout out Eric Smith, Will Kiley. So it's 2, not 3. New patrons. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My bad, I overcounted. Nick follows up with the dog, the puppy. Nick. Well, Nick, since I answered your question and showed you so much love to your pup, you got to keep coming back to lives. We'll be live again Tuesday night at 6. I'll be live on the SEC channel tomorrow night. And then Tuesday at 6, Wednesday at 6, Thursday at 6. And y'all also should go follow Steeler Will on Twitter. He took some heat from me today. I threw some freaking jabs at him. Let's go to Bullfrog. Josh Thompson is a solid guard. I like it. We need some, because look, I was critical of Josh Thompson and how some of the practices have gone. But when the lights turn on, he might turn on. I don't know. But do I think Josh Thompson's going to figure it out? Yeah. There we go. Yes! Pow, out, LSU, boom! Tonight! We're doing steaks.